Today is Tuesday, September 19th, 2017. It's 9 a.m. I hereby call this meeting to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Chairman Fambro?
Present.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Present.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Present.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Present.
If everyone would please stand, and I would like to welcome Mr. Tyler Eshelman, who's the program coordinator, and Todd Windward, the executive director of Taos Initiative for Life Together. And they just wanted to share some thoughts with us before our meeting starts today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm Tyler. I moved to Taos a little over a year and a half ago. So I'm pretty new here, relatively speaking, and still learning. And so I'm thrilled to be able to be here for a little bit today. My friend and colleague and boss, Todd Windward, has lived here for over 20 years. And so I wanted to invite him to join me today in opening this commission.
Thank you all, Commissioner. Good morning. Thank you for us to be here. You may know me from starting Roots and Wings Community School or from Vista Grande, another school that I started, and I've been in educational reform. I just wanted to come today as a minister. I'm also a licensed minister, and so I wanted to honor your work, thinking that we're all working toward regional resilience and health, and sometimes the servanthood piece we forget until we remember how deeply in service we are to our environment and to our place. And we want to give you so much thanks for focusing on not just this generation, but the 7 generations so often that we look toward for health and well-being in our community. I represent New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light across the whole state. I also represent both Mennonite tradition, Methodist tradition, and the United Church of Christ in this town. And so I wanted to bless this morning with you to think about our service to the watershed and to our place, that both people and humans and non-humans are dependent on our work today. We have a prayer poem this morning from Margaret Atwood that talks about ownership, and sometimes when we think we own something, we realize we're actually owned by it.
This is The Moment by Margaret Atwood. The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room, your house, half-acre, square mile, island, country, knowing at last how you got there, and say, I own this, is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave, and you can't breathe. No, they whisper, you own nothing. You are a visitor, time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming, we never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way around.
And so being found by Taos is sort of the theme that I hope we can have today. And I want to give thanks specifically to Candace, that I think Tyler and Candace met at last year's Regeneration Festival. This Regeneration Festival just happened last month, and it was focusing on the 7th generation. And so I give thanks to you for carrying on your work. Would you like to end, Tyler? Do that.
Let's just end with a prayer. Dear Creator God, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this community, this Board of Commissioners, this group of people who have come here who care about this place. We want to bless the work of this commission and all of those who are at work in our community, finding those connections between each other, to the land, to just water. And we thank you for your continued presence throughout that work. In your name.
Thank you. Please remain standing, or are you
We wanted to leave a brochure with you for the Taos Initiative for Life Together. It's an incubator for intentional life change, and we'll be bringing young people like Tyler in service and formation to this community. So you may see us around town helping in both environmental justice, human suffering issues, and land-based ethics. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for caring about our community. Thank you. Sheriff Holcroft, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Okay, Commissioners, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Item 5 is awards and recognitions. This is a certificate of appreciation presented to Taos County for their support in hosting the 2017 annual conference for the Northern New Mexico Association of Public Officials. Mr. Porter.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we received this award last week. I wanted to share it with the Board of County Commissioners, and I wanted to thank our planning staff who really were integral in hosting this. They did such a good job in hosting, they even cleaned up after themselves. We had kudos from our custodial staff that this is one of the best conferences in terms of they actually took care of their housekeeping and cleaned up after themselves as well. So I just want to thank planning staff for inviting them here, hosting them, and having such a great conference. Thank you guys.
Very nice. Okay, moving on, next item is citizens' concern. Any citizen wishing to address the commission at this time regarding an agenda item that's later and you're not going to be able to be here or something, no commissioner can take action. However, we can direct staff to follow up or something in that nature. So if anyone would like to speak, we ask that you keep your comments to less than 5 minutes. And go ahead and state your name for the record.
Arthur Gallegos from Mali, New Mexico.
Good morning. Thank you for
Good
being here.
morning. Good morning to you folks, and thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to do this today. Some weeks ago, I came to visit with your administrative staff regarding the issue. I won't take a long time to discuss it here today, but I did leave some copies so that you would have copies, each of you, to read what I want to address here today.
That's this one here, Commissioners.
And what it is I would like to explore, study along with you guys, and see if we can sometime in the future enact an ordinance such as the one that was a legislative act that was enacted in the state of Colorado. And it deals with the issue of noxious weed. And we have a big problem in Amalia regarding noxious weed, especially all the thistles. They are all converted and want to live in Amalia and Costilla and Jaroso and Garcia not so much Jaroso because of the Colorado Act. The Colorado Legislative Act, as it was written, I'll just read one paragraph of it. It enacted that the article in the General Assembly finds and declares that there is a need to ensure that all lands of the state of Colorado, whether in private or public ownership, are protected by and subject to the jurisdiction of a local government empowered to manage undesirable plants as designated by the state of Colorado and the local governing body. In making such determination, the General Assembly hereby finds and declares that certain undesirable plants constitute a present threat to the continued economic and environmental value of the lands of the state, and if present in any area of the state must be managed. It is the intent of the General Assembly that the advisory commissions appointed by the counties and municipalities under this article in developing undesirable plant management plans consider the elements of integrated management as defined in this article, as well as all appropriate and available control and management methods, seeking those methods which are at least environmentally damaging and which are practical and economically reasonable. So It goes on to say that the General Assembly hereby finds and declares that noxious weeds have become a threat to the natural resources of Colorado as thousands of acres of rangeland and habitat for wildlife and native plant communities are being destroyed by noxious weeds each year. An organized, coordinated effort must be made to stop the spread of noxious weed, and that such an effort can be best facilitated by a state coordinator who will assist in building coalitions and coordinate the effort of state, federal, local, and private landowners in developing plans for the control of noxious weeds without unnecessarily disrupting the development of such lands. The designation and classification of noxious weeds into categories for immediate eradication, containment, and suppression will further assist the state in coordinating efforts to stop the spread of noxious weeds. Because the spread of noxious weeds can be largely attributed to the movement of seed and plant parts on motor vehicles, and because noxious weeds are becoming an increasingly maintenance problems on highway right-of-ways in this state, additional resources are needed to fight the spread of noxious weeds. The use of money in the Noxious Weed Management Fund to assist local government bodies and affect landowners in the eradication, containment, or suppression of noxious weeds best serves the citizens of Colorado. This article is in addition to Article 5 of this title intended to be an expansive substitution for the provisions of said article. So I want to read just one of the items and then go down.
About 45 seconds.
Thank you. It says, duty to manage noxious weeds. It is the duty of all persons to use integrated methods to manage noxious weeds if the same are likely to be materially damaging to the land of neighboring landowners. And that is our problem in Amalia. We have, I'll give myself as an example, my property, my brothers, my other family members in Amalia who own property. We take care of our properties. We mostly cut the weeds mechanically. Not too many people use spray of any sort. And so, but our neighbors, on the other hand, those are acres and acres of noxious weeds, and one of them is Canadian thistles. The whole family is there. You got musk, you got bull, and you got Canadian thistle. So what I'm asking the county is to please study what I've given in the materials and see if we can enact an ordinance in Taos County to address this issue following some of the language in this item that I have there for you. I want to thank you for allowing me to do this to you today. And I hope that you take on the task of studying it, and I want to be working with you, so I'll be available for any and all tasks that are needed to get this thoroughly studied and possibly passed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I did want to say Taos Soil and Water Conservation will be holding a meeting this week at noon regarding noxious weeds. And perhaps you could contact Taos Soil and Water to see if you can be a part of it. And that is, actually it's the 21st at noon.
Thursday?
A week from the 21st, yes, Thursday. And it'll be discussing weed control. So perhaps you could go to that meeting.
Yes, I can.
All right.
What time will it be?
Noon is what I have down. You should check with Taos Soil and Water and see if...
I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chairman, if I may add, it's my understanding that this is an issue of state regulation. So I would ask you to follow up with your state delegation as well, your representatives and your senator. The ordinance that you just wrote, Colorado has given the authority from the state to the local governments to regulate. We don't have that yet. So I would ask you to contact your state delegation and see where they are with it as well.
Thank you, Miss. But one of the things that I want to address is having an ordinance. I'm not looking to change the state, not yet. I want to have the Taos County Commission help us with the problems that we have in our county. That's all I want to address. I don't want to go into the state.
I understand that, sir, but generally this is an issue of what we call preemption in the law. So the state has to take the lead. We don't have the authority to get in the way of the state with what they're doing with noxious weeds. So in order for us to do anything on the local level, we would need permission from the state, and we don't have that. Colorado has that, we don't yet. So your efforts are best focused, one, with your neighbors, but two, with the state in terms of getting them to act.
Thank you. Thank you. We did discuss it with the manager, so this is an ongoing discussion.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I did reach out to the Extension Office. Mr. Tony Valdez is still out on some sick leave, but I think in the future we'd like to bring back Mr. Valdez, Mr. DeHill, and we'll have a bit more in-depth conversation about how we can either help or support the efforts at the state level if that's the will of the commissioners.
Thank you.
Sir?
My name is Rocky Morissette. Thank you for hearing me. I'll be very brief. I'm trying to find out, I'm trying to squelch some rumors out on the West Rim. Are there any future or current plans for a solar farm in Bald Eagle Estates?
Anybody know?
Okay. Are there any current or future plans for paving Montoya Road?
Where's Montoya Road?
It's off of Rim Road.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, at this time, no, we don't have any plans at the county level to pave Montoya Road.
Is it in discussion?
No, we're not having discussion. We're trying to maintain it to the best we can as a dirt road. It is a long road.
That last attempt, all it did was throw up big boulders in the middle of the road. I appreciate your efforts, but it didn't do very well. Third item is, does the county have any plans, or will the county make plans to remediate the illegal junkyard at about 2¼ mile on Montoya Road? It was always called Junkyard Jeff's.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, let me look further into that. I know that our solid waste department is working on remediating a dump site out on that side of the rim, and I'm not sure if this is the exact one. I believe it is, but let me double check and get clarity on that. But we have been informed of a couple dump sites out in that area. We've been trying to work with property owners to encourage them to clean it up before we have to take the next step at the county level.
There are literally dozens of those kind of dump sites, but I was addressing the junkyard. Also, there's a lot of junk piling up along the road. Last item I have is, are there any provisions for the vendors out on the bridge? Another location for them, or have they just been dismissed?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that is a state issue. It doesn't have anything to do with the county. I do believe that Commissioner O'Donnell may have a little more information as to some of the efforts they're making with their bridge group, but at this time, it's not a county issue for us to have any say.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the commission at this time?
Yes, I would like to. Arthur Sanchez with the RCCLA in Rio Costilla. And I have a couple of things I want to talk about, and mostly it's the noxious weed and the transfer of the waters from Santa Barbara to Santa Fe. I'd like to hear what you guys have party to come on. Anyway, the noxious weed, it started, I guess, in Costilla, went to Amalia, and now it has spread so far that every property seems to have it, especially in the springtime. And it's just gone wild. In my places, I have the Uraca on the south end. They don't do anything, nothing about it, Carson National Forest. And in Amalia, I have 2 neighbors that have it very thick. They don't do nothing. I try to keep my place clean, but it's very hard to do. So we need to address it and find out what can be done about it. And on the water transfers, I'd like to know how far you guys have gone. We've done a letter in support of to stop that water transfer. And we wish that we would be able to stop it. And also calculate how much water they want to transfer, because when you use it on an irrigating system, you have just so much water goes underground, the rest is evaporated. And because they want to transfer the whole thing, and that's not
how irrigation goes. So that needs to be calculated and see how much water goes underground to be transferred.
So I can speak to that. A year ago, we held the hearing in front of the state engineer in terms of the water transfer. Santa Fe County purchased the water openly, I think about 8 years ago, and they've applied as part of the AMIT settlement. I believe it's 600 acre feet per year. The pumping would stop entirely in the Costilla Valley, and the rights, the paper rights would be transferred to a regional water system in Poake, which will serve the Pueblo and non-Pueblo users around Santa Fe County. So I participated in the hearing last year. The state engineer did approve that transfer. The county has filed a notice of appeal of the state engineer's decision, and that's where it sits. But in terms of the application, it's for about 611 acre feet.
Not the 15 or whatever.
That's a separate part. So there was about, I believe, 1,100 acre feet that Santa Fe County gave to the federal government, and the federal government is transferring that. But our protest was about Santa Fe County transferring the 611 acre feet to the regional water system.
And because I think in 2009 and 10, we protested at that legislature. And there was we didn't know anything about it. They came up and put it up, and then we protested at them. And we keep doing it almost every year at legislature. I don't know how the state engineer or the judge did that transfer, because it had been protested ever since it started.
Well, my understanding is Santa Fe County is owner of the water. Whatever they want to do with it, will be open to, if they would like to transfer it, if they'd like to sell it, all of that has to go through the state engineer process. So I don't have the history of what Santa Fe County has done with water prior to now, or what they may be doing with other water that they own. But this transfer is about related to the AMIT settlement of ceasing the pumping at the top of the world and transferring those rights to the regional water system. So pumping would cease up there, pumping would start as part of this regional water system, and that's the nature of the current top of the world protest. As I said, the county did participate in the hearing. The state engineer decided to grant the application. The county has filed a notice of appeal, and that's sort of where it sits right now.
Like, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we went with a state engineer, and he was completely against it. I don't know what state engineer came up with being able to transfer it.
Currently, Tom Blaine is the state engineer, and he's the one that approved the application that we're appealing right now.
So it's going to do, okay, the RCCLA board wants to support you guys on the district court going, or? So if we need to be present, just let us know.
Okay, appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on this gentleman's remark about noxious weeds, sir.
Yes.
There is a county commissioner handbook, and we are charged with controlling noxious weeds. So I'll have to take a look at what exactly the handbook says, but it is part of our charge to deal with noxious weeds.
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Gagos.
Just also a comment on the water rights transfer and the amount of water that's going to be, that will be eventually taken out of District 2 is 1,800 acre feet, and we're not going to know how to monitor that. That 1,200 acre feet that Santa Fe sold or gave to the federal government to be given to BIA, that's just. So it's 1,800 acre feet. We are protesting 600, but the idea is that there'll be 1,800 acre feet that will no longer be able to be pumped out of there. So we'll do what we can. I think that we're still in the process. Appreciate the support letters, and we'll keep you up to speed if we need more support.
Yeah, that property belongs to the RCCLA, and it was sold to Top of the World. And according to our bylaws and everything else, no water is transferred out of the LCCLA area or LC itself. And it will lower our water table, which our wells will go dry.
Well, we'll have further discussion. I think I'd like to see the documents as well, and maybe be able to pass it on to legal counsel. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the commission at this time? Careful.
Good morning, Jerry Ogre, County Sheriff. Chairman, Commissioners, and all in the audience, I just wanted to briefly speak about the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge and the vending and a position and stance that I've taken in conjunction with Mr. Tom Church, the Director of the Department of Transportation. Even before we had a tragic event that occurred out there where a man was hit and struck by a passing motorist and nearly killed, we had identified that there was roadside hazards and distraction, that being the vendors. The vendors themselves parked well off of the highway, but still on the right-of-way, of course. But what that created was a distraction of people looking towards them to see the goods as they are displayed in open view. And it created a parking issue, whereas tourists or those that are interested in those goods would park along the roadway's edge and then cross over the highway either to the north or to the south, back and forth. I think everyone's very familiar with this problem and this issue. So in working with them, we placed, the Highway Department did place signs out there restricting the parking and the vending. That was not effective. Last Wednesday, nearly a week ago, they determined to take that to the next level, and they placed barricades along the northwest side of the roadway as well as the southwest side of the roadway to stop the parking and vending there. Added more signage, talking about the no vending, no parking areas and so forth. The following couple days following that on the weekend, the barrier was moved, which vendors then went in behind where they had always parked and done their goods, still creating the parking hazard and the pedestrian crossing the roadway hazard. Those were put back in place. Deputies did respond out there, counseled with each of the vendors that was present, gave them a fair and stern warning, reported, and thus far we're fortunate to not have had anything else, although I anticipate this weekend might bring some more rebellious actions. I don't know, but we are working with the Highway Department on that. My stance, just so it's very clear to everyone, is that does create a hazardous situation. The parking and the tourism that parks along the northwest and southwest is a hazard. It creates just a tremendous amount of pedestrian product, which could be eliminated if they would simply utilize the parking area that is on the BLM at the visitor center, as well as if the vendors were to set up there, which is what Miles Bill does. We will continue to monitor it, and if necessary, we will be taking enforcement action and citing these individuals into court that continue to express their desire to vend in a roadway that creates a hazardous situation. I stand for any questions, and I hope and think I already have Commission support in our endeavor.
Thank you, Sheriff. Vice Chair Geiger.
Mr. Chair, what's the current speed limit crossing the bridge?
Well, it reduces from 45, I believe. The sign that was posted as 30 has been removed. So currently on the bridge itself, there's not an actual posted sign. So you enter onto that at 45 miles per hour. But that could have been replaced now.
What would be our process to NMDOT to reduce that to 20 or 15 or 10, gradually from one side to the other, quarter mile back or half mile back, slowing down?
Correct.
To that point, and then, fines being up to $1,000 or something crazy that's going to put people to slow themselves down. I don't know how that works, but I definitely would want to have some further discussion in that process.
Well, the process would mean, typically speed reductions or increments increasing are done in 10 mile per hour increments. So it would need to start back at, the zone and reduce down to whatever is deemed, a safe speed. There are some areas in Taos County and on state highways that reduce at a 15 mile per hour rate. In fact, one coming that you see every day, San Jose, on 522 reduces from 60 to 45. So I guess there's no tried and true, but the typical is 10 mile per hour increments. As far as that, the State Department of Transportation controls all state roadways. We could make recommendations. They would have to take those under advisement and probably study it themselves. Personally, I think it would be a good idea to reduce the speed to 20, 25 going across the bridge.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Chairman, at a recent NPR-TPO meeting, it was indicated by DOT that they would be doing a traffic study and working towards reducing the speed limit there. In addition, we could also pass a resolution, the commission could pass a resolution that we support a reduction of the speed limit on the bridge. So those would be two avenues, but I understand that they are doing a traffic study and that they will be reducing the speed limit.
I think they are, and I think it's going to be more broad than just the speed limit itself. Of course, they've had communications from me in writing with that recommendation as well.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right. Anyone else wishing to address the commission at this time? Seeing none, we will move on. Next item on the agenda, item 7 is approval, discussion consideration, and approval of the minutes from the August 15, 2017 regular meeting minutes.
Move to approve. I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from August 15, 2017. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Item B is approval of the August 29, 2017 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the August 29th meeting with two changes. One on page 16, where it says Harper, it should be Parker. And on page 13, to strike, the commission agreed that the county should apply, and that.
I have a motion to approve the August 29th regular meeting minutes with two corrections.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Item C is approval of the September 7th special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Item 8 is our consent agenda. I will now read the consent agenda. If any commissioner has anything that they wish pulled for further discussion, that will be the next order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Item 8, DFA Resolution Number 2 for 2017-18 fiscal year, resolution adjusting the 2018 fiscal year budget to account for the NMAC Wildfire Risk Reduction Grant to update the 2017 Penasco Valley CWPP. Item B is DFA Resolution Number 3 of 2017-18 fiscal year, resolution requesting to transfer expenditures associated with utility payments of the foster grandparent program and senior program. Item C is DFA Resolution Number 4 for 2017-18 fiscal year, resolution requesting to adjust the 2018 fiscal year final budget to properly account for the EMS Local System Improvement Grant for the purchase of a bariatric lift. Item D is a DFA Resolution Number 5, 2017-18 fiscal year, a resolution adjusting the 2018 fiscal year final budget to transfer permanent cash from general fund to capital for the purchase of public works vehicle. Item E is approval of a budget adjustment intergovernmental grants fund 0218. Item F, approval of budget adjustment fire protection fund 0209. Item G, approval of the budget adjustment property valuation fund 0203. Item H is approval of award of ITB 2018-01 for construction services for Chamiso Road paving project. Item I is approval of award for RFP 2018-01 forest thinning contract services. Item J is approval of award for RFP 2018-02 residential treatment services for adolescents for Taos County. Item K is approval of change order number 6 in the amount of $133,638.77 for CDR construction contract joint CDBG reconstruction project between the Taos County and the town of Taos for the Youth and Family Center. Item L is request for approval of out-of-state travel and actual reimbursement for 3 EMS employees, Chris Medina, Wayne Jenkins, and Lenny Quintana to attend EMS World Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, October 17th through 21st, 2017. Item M is request for approval for out-of-state travel for Sylvia Trujillo Chacon to attend hostage crisis negotiations from November 27th through December 1st in Mesa, Arizona. And finally, item N, request for approval of out-of-state travel for Gilbert Atencio to attend TASER instructor course October 2nd through 3rd, 2017 in Fountain, Colorado. Commissioners, you have heard the consent agenda as read into the record. Pleasure of the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear more on items H and M.
Okay, item H and M will be pulled from the consent agenda.
And Mr.
M as in Michael, Mr. Chairman?
M as in Michael.
Thank you.
And yes, I'd like to pull item K.
Okay, we have a request to pull items H, K, and M as in Mary. Pleasure of the commission on the remaining items.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve items A through G, I, J, L, and N as in Nancy. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Okay, the first item on the agenda is item H. This is pulled by Commissioner Romero for discussion. This is approval of award ITB 2018-01 construction services for Chamiso Road paving project. Commissioner Romero.
Just if someone can elaborate a little bit more on that, Mr. Chairman, from where will it be paved, what width, and what ground preparation will take place before it's actually paved.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Commission. It's from my understanding, the roadway itself that's going to be constructed is the contractor themselves will be placing in the squash pipe, which is the only basically infrastructure that needs to go in there from the Acequia side of it, and have cleared it with the Acequia Association on that side. Otherwise, the ground is pretty much set. There are some areas in which the contractor will lift the road a little bit where it kind of scoops down a little just to even the road out. But a majority of it is pretty much paving. There is some prepping, but the contractor themselves will be doing it.
So the paving will be from where to where?
The paving will start from where the town of Taos stopped with their portion on their border, off of Chamiso Road. And it'll head out towards Camino Medio to the area where it's kind of paved in from Camino Medio where the curb starts. It will end right there.
Is there going to be any realigning of that area, that intersection, Camino and Chamiso? What will take place there?
Chairman, Commissioner Romero, that realigning will take place with the Camino de Medio project.
Okay.
So it's one of the reasons that Mr. Abita was selected as engineer, because he's also the sub-engineer on the other project.
So no land acquisition will take place?
Not on this project. It will with the other project. The property on the south of Chamiso Road at the intersection of Camino de Medio, that there will be a land taking there, and also I believe on the north side, but for sure I can tell you on the south side. Mr. Abita's already been in contact with that property owner.
And when will it start and when will it finish?
We don't have a start date.
Is it going to be this year?
No, it's going to be this year. It'll be in the next 2 weeks, so we could send out an email. We still need to get the
contract before the commission, and it'll get paid before the end of October.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that it appears like it's going to be an early winter this year. So it's just, we always have this problem where we start late with our projects and we end up rushing and maybe sometimes not doing quite a good job in paving. So just want to make sure that the contractor is also aware of that.
And there's a performance bond associated with this.
Yes, the performance and payment bond is required, obviously, by state statute. The contractor's fully aware of the weather constraints as well, so they're working as closely as possible with Taos County and trying to get that particular project done.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Road, from the highway in, you're saying that is town property?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
there's a drainage problem right there.
It's our understanding that all the paved portion is town of Taos within the town of Taos limits.
So what's the length of Chenisa Road? Because the contract is $276,000. What's the length of Chenisa? Why is it so high, I guess?
We received 2 bids. Engineer's estimate was a little bit lower on that. And it's just what the contractor felt was a fair bid. We did discuss it internally, if we should bid out the project again. The reason we didn't bid it out again is because we wouldn't make a construction schedule for this year to get it paved, and a lot of the residents in that area did want it paved.
So what's the length of pavement?
I don't know off the top of my head. In fact, I went upstairs to look at the construction plans.
Okay, Commissioner Romero, you pulled the item. Is that enough information that you would like to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move for approval.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the award of ITB 2018-01 construction services for Chenisa Road paving. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Next item in order of taken is item M as in Mary. Request for approval of out-of-state travel for Sylvia Trujillo Chacon to attend hostage crisis negotiations from November 27th to December 1st, 2017 in Mesa, Arizona. Commissioner Romero.
This is just the way it's worded, Mr. Chairman, it sparked my interest. So I was just wanting to hear more about it.
Okay. As part of the SRT, Sheriff's Response Team, we currently have a hostage to the crisis negotiator. That is Detective Cellulo Gallegos. As Commission may or may not be aware, he has given his notice of intended retirement. So I need to replace him with a member of my department, my office, to be able to negotiate at the scene with those that are in distress, mental health crisis and issues, are calls that we go to quite regularly. And obviously the negotiator plays an intricate role in reducing the need to forcibly take a person. And that's the thing. Mesa, Arizona was selected because New Mexico doesn't offer this, or hasn't offered this in quite some time.
It's a training.
Yes, sir, it's a training. Chief Mac as a certified crisis and hostage negotiator.
Commissioner, I have personally seen this deputy in action dealing with a youth that was a runaway, and she handled it just exemplary. I mean, that's a very good choice. Commissioner Blankenhorn.
And it's also useful in domestic violence situations too. I know those are really difficult calls, and so I applaud the sheriff's.
Commissioners, it's job-specific training and it's needed. I'd love to be able to send everybody to advanced training to learn better negotiation skills and stuff. And I think Deputy Trujillo Chacon is an excellent choice for this.
Absolutely.
Okay, move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Romero. Made the motion to approve the request for out-of-state travel for Sylvia Trujillo Chacon to attend hostage crisis negotiations from November 27th to December 1st in Mesa, Arizona. Second. And I got a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes, thank you, Sheriff. Item K was pulled by Commissioner O'Donnell. This is approval of change order number 6 in the amount of $133,638.77 for city guard construction contract, the joint CBD reconstruction project between the county and the Taos Community Defense. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was at a town council meeting last week. They approved that change order number 6 in the amount of $122,627.17, excluding NMGRT. So there's a discrepancy. If you turn to your packet on item K, and first page says the contract amount excluding NMGRT, and I do believe we should be in line with the same amount that the town approved last week.
What we have shown in our documents is the $133,638.77, so that's what's before you for approval today.
I believe that's an incorrect amount.
The amount in the packet is on the purchase, on the change order from the contractor is inclusive of the New Mexico GRT. The contract amount on the AIA document does not have the GRT, and there was also a GRT adjustment because of some of the billing when we changed over the new GRT taxes in July 1st. And so what you're seeing on his breakdown has GRT. What you see on the AIA documents that for signature show up without GRT. So that's the difference, the 122 to the 133.
So why did the town approve 122 and we're approving 133?
We're approving the full amount, but it doesn't affect the change.
Richard, we can't speak for the town. What's before us is the change order, Commissioner.
I thought we tracked the same amount as the town does. I don't understand.
Lori's down, coming on her way down, our grants administrator, but the math is all correct. I don't know what they did at the time and why they approved the 122 just on the contract. We're approving the full amount. It doesn't change the amount on the contract. We're approving the amount including GRT. They approved the amount exclusive of GRT based on just the AIA document, but the GRT is still there applied at the end of the contract. So I'm not going to say semantics, but just, like I said, I wasn't at the meeting. The full amount with GRT and the purchase order will have to include GRT 133. I don't know what the town of Taos, how they address that issue, because it's 122 for the work plus GRTs.
The contract says we pay them GRTs?
We have to pay GRTs.
Every contract says that.
I thought the contractor pays the GRTs.
No, contractor bills the client, and the contractor pays the GRTs procedurally, but the client pays the contractor the GRTs. We don't pay GRTs directly. We pay it to any service that we have, any construction service. It's $100,000 and it's 8%. The contractor bills us $108,000 and we pay the $108,000, that $8,000 of GRT the contractor pays to the state.
It almost sounds like we're paying the town's GRTs. If the whole change order is 122.
You pay on construction projects, you pay the GRT based on the location of the project, not the location of the business. So if it were outside of town limits, you would pay Taos County GRT. If it's in town limits, you pay town Taos GRTs. If it's an overlap like El Prado Water and Sanitation and Town Hall over by North Guadalajara North, you pay that additional mill levy. So it's based strictly on, GRTs are based on where the construction project is. This project is in town limits, so we pay the town GRT, and it's a combined, I mean, this project is by-funded by town and Taos County, so the GRT gets split, is what we pay, but the contract is to the fiscal agent, town Taos.
I just still think there's a discrepancy because it sounds like we're paying the town's GRT here. I mean, we're paying that 11,000 should be split GRTs between the town and county.
It is, but contractually, we don't have two contracts. Town of Taos is the fiscal agent, so there's only one amount that, the total amount of the contract, we're splitting 50-50.
Mr. Chairman,
We're
I'd like
approving
to...
the change order, not...
I know, I'd like to have the
133.
change order, I'd like to have this postpone till later, till he contacts the town and explains to us why the town approved a 122 and we're approving a 133. I don't understand that.
But you just explained it to you, Commissioner.
The town approved the AIA contract amount, which states exclusive of GRT. We could approve the AIA document, or we could approve the total amount, 132, which is inclusive of the GRT. It doesn't change their contract. Their contract only gets GRT added once. It's just a procedure. Their clerk asked for the approval on the AIA document. We put in the full amount so that you know what it is, the full amount. But it doesn't affect the amount that we're paying in the contract.
Mr. Cordova.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, yeah, the total amount of the change order that we're approving or being requested to approve is the 133,820.55. We're not paying the entire amount of GRT just on the county side. That's for the entire project, and we're still splitting the project 50-50 down the middle. So the entire amount that we're approving today has to include the GRT. Whether the town did or not, we can't speak on the town, whether they made an error, they didn't make an error, or their language said that it was on top of the 122. So what we're putting before you today is what we were requested to put before you. So if we take it back, we're probably going to hold up the project a little bit more so they can't continue the progress. We are hoping that this project gets completed. We are ready to move into the next cycle, which is our cycle. So the county is very excited to get the project completed so that we can start our CDBG process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, would you please follow up on this to see what the discrepancy was? Because I was there at that meeting. And bring that back and explain it.
Ms. Montoya, to the best of your recollection, the amount of the change order number 6 is 133,638.77, inclusive of GRT.
Yes.
And is that what you're asking approval for?
Yes. And I think the discrepancy is the gross receipts tax. They're going to correct it at the end of all the billing, not, they wanted to correct it now just because it would look better, but they have opted to do it at the very end of the final billing, if that's the question in place.
Motion to approve. I have a motion to approve change order number 6 in the amount of $133,638.77 for CDR construction, joint CDBG construction project between Taos County and Town of Taos for Youth and Family Center.
Mr. Chairman,
Do I have a motion and a second? Commissioner Romero.
if Commissioner Blankenhorn could amend his motion to make sure that Commissioner O'Donnell's request to find out exactly the GRT currently.
You okay with that? Just verifying that we're doing the total amount. Okay. And Vice Chair Gagos, are you okay with seconding with that clarification?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I still have discussion on this. This project will be completed at the end of this month.
Currently, Commissioner O'Donnell, they're on schedule to do punch out by the 28th. There might be a few little items that will be on the punch list, but substantial completion should be September 28th. Everything looks good for it right now. Roof on the main roofing on the hockey rink and the lobby is, I'm going to say, 99% complete. They need to do gutters and some architectural details. The stucco and the building envelope on the pool area, they're down to color coat. They're wet curing it right now. That's why we had extended it so they could wet cure the plaster walls longer. The longer you wet cure the plaster walls, the better off you're going to be. The fewer cracks, less shrinkage, more water replenishing, but they're on schedule to probably start the coloring next Monday, maybe later this week, depending on weather. So yeah, we are on schedule to be complete by September 28th.
If there are additional change orders, who bears the cost? We're up to $1 million. I mean,
we are currently under the budget, and we're probably right at about $40,000 under the budget, maybe even more if we wanted some additional work. But I'd have to look at all my notes, but we're pretty close to between $12,000 and $40,000 under the budget right now. Been watching it very carefully.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Thank you. I'm confident that staff is ensuring that we are not paying more than our fair share under this agreement.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Okay, we do have a public hearing at 10. The next item is item 9. It's resolutions and ordinances. This is a resolution 2017-44, a resolution adopting fiscal year 2019-23 infrastructure capital improvement plans for Taos County senior program sites. Mr. Trujillo.
How are you? Pretty good, man. I'll do it. Good morning. Before you have the resolution. I prepared the infrastructure capital improvement plan for the Amalia, the Cuesta, the Chavizales, the Taos sites for the new fiscal year. Actually, for fiscal year 2019-2023. And I stand for questions from the commission if there are any. You have your packets here in front of you.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Romero.
good to see you, Mr. Trujillo. If you could just highlight for the public's.
For the Amalia Senior Center, we've included requests for vehicles, for building modifications, and for equipment services. And like before the Chummy saw the same thing, we want to do some building modifications there, some new equipment, and some new vehicles also. As you know, that we provide Meals on Wheels services. And for example, last year we provided over 45,000 and some in Meals on Wheels alone for Taos County residents, and provided about 23 or 24,000 congregate meals. So as a total of 74,500 meals we served, and we utilize the equipment, we utilize the vehicles, and the buildings need to meet standards. So those are the requests that we submitted basically for each particular site. So
planning work.
What's the status on the, Mr. Chairman, on the deed from the town of Taos on the current senior citizens?
I'll yield to Mr. Porter on that one.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Romero, something I was going to talk about in manager's report. We can go ahead and jump to that a little bit. We have sent a letter requesting a reversion requesting to remove the reversionary clause, and the town is open to it. But they have actually, and I'll get into it further in my manager's report, come to us with a suggestion on use in collaboration with the town, UNM, and the county. So I'll get into that here in my manager's report. But it does look like they're willing to remove the reversionary clause.
Anything else, Commissioner Romero?
That's it, Mr.
Okay.
Motion.
I have a motion to approve by Vice Chair Gallegos.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second.
With discussion, please. Mr. Chairman, the $100,000 for water rights, Cuesta, what is that about?
We're looking at trying to move the current building facility to another location, and it's imperative that we have enough water to provide for our use if we do get that funding to repair that building, because we do have an agreement, and the Village of Cuesta has an agreement with schools that we can utilize the old, what was the name of that building, Mark? Mr. Commissioner? La Cienega. And the current building in Cuesta is very small, and we actually share that building with the Head Start program. So it's a very, very small building. So and it's on a dangerous hill, so in the winter time, the seniors have a difficult time traversing up that hill. So we're trying to find a better and more reasonable location for it, and that's basically what we put in for water rights. This will be a term obligation bond request.
Okay.
And that'll go through the state Aging and Long-Term Services Division. We're very successful in the 2016 general obligation bond now. Hopefully we can be just as successful in the next one. So.
Well, good luck. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gallegos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes.
And I'd like to thank Brother for preparing the resolution. Thank you. I forgot to mention her name, that she drafted that resolution, so, thank you very much.
All right, it is 10 o'clock. And item 10 is a public hearing. Are we ready to proceed? Mr. Pereira.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and County Manager, County Attorney. Yes, this is a public hearing, and this is a request from Michael Myers and Patricia Myers to vacate 5-lot summary subdivision that was approved by Taos County in 2004. And they're the applicants and agents acting on behalf of Pot LLC. And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff has reviewed their plat vacation request and as referenced in my documentation that I sent to you. This property is located just to the east of the intersection of Maestas and La Morada Road. And the applicant/agents have complied with all the public hearing notification requirements. And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I staff for any questions at this time on the staff report that I submitted to you for your consideration.
Commissioners. Hearing none, at this time we will, does the applicant have anything else to add? Before I go to the public hearing.
I defer to the applicants to see if they have any comments or questions.
Okay.
No? Okay.
All right, and at this time I will open up the public hearing, asking anyone that's here in attendance if they wish to get up and speak for or against this project or this vacation of summary subdivision. You will need to be sworn in by the clerk prior to giving your testimony here today. Come forward and please state your name and be sworn by the clerk.
Good morning. My name is Louise Soreski.
Okay.
Can you raise your right hand? Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm under oath and penalty of law for perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true? Sure. Yes, I do. And state your name for the record.
And please spell the last name.
Sareezky.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And if I may, I would like to give you copies of the documents I'll be referring to. Return with one more. Just as for information, I live at 10 Sagebrush Trail, which is at the easternmost end of the easement called Sagebrush Trail. My property then runs down the south side of the easement and across the northeastern side of the easement. My mother purchased land in 1997, another tract of land that is adjacent to Michael Myers' land, and that runs along the northern side of Sagebrush Trail. Subsequently, I've inherited that land. My question today is how Michael Myers claims that Sagebrush Trail is his property. What I have given you here is a plat that was created in 1981 by Marion Myers. Since that time, Michael and his brother have re-subdivided the land a bit, but the total acreage, I assume, has remained the same. This plat refers to 21.036 acres, and if you add up the acreage of the plots, the tracts involved here, you will come up with 21.036 acres. There is mention of Sagebrush Trail also on the left side. The road designated Sagebrush Trail is a bladed access route, as shown. My question is that as the tracts in this subdivision add up to 21.036 acres, and there is no declaration on this plat, or if you look to the next page I've given you, on the deed whereby a special warranty deed, Marion Myers cedes this property to Michael Myers and his brother, and referring to the amount of land as 21.036 acres. The plat I have shown you on the front is referred to 2/3 of the way down this deed. So this is the information regarding the inheritance of Michael Myers and his brother. Nowhere is Sagebrush Trail or the easement included in language or acreage in this inheritance. Michael Myers claims he's the owner of the easement, or has been in the past, and is requesting that he encroach upon this easement in order to pick up some land for his property from the easement. This is a 50-foot easement. I see nowhere where he has the legal right to claim ownership of this land unless subsequent to his inheritance from Marion Myers, he's bought the easement from, I don't know who owned it, maybe the county.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that if Mr. Myers is asking for permission to encroach upon this easement, he needs to produce ownership of the easement, which certainly is not represented in the documents I give you. Nothing else. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to address during the commission during this public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, any thoughts from our attorney?
Not at this time. This is a new issue for me. I suggest we get through the public hearing, and then if you wish to deliberate, we could certainly do that in either open or closed session with the advisement of the planning director and Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. If I may, I just wanted to echo those statements that were made by Ms. Robinson, and let's have the applicants speak on behalf of the application.
Thank you. Again, please state your name for the record and be sworn by the clerk prior to any testimony.
Michael Myers.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm under oath and penalty of law for perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and factual?
I do. I believe this all came about because in 2004, 2005, we did a summary subdivision. We worked with the planning department, and our program was to subdivide and develop the property, obviously. I've submitted a letter to their intention, a one-page letter explaining why we're trying to vacate the subdivision at this time. I hope you've all had a chance to read that. It's a consolidated one-page letter. What I had done prior to this is we we didn't complete all the requirements for a subdivision. There were 3 minor things that weren't accomplished, and they were, I believe in the letter, explained why, because of circumstances financially and personal issues. My idea was to take a portion of what was referred to as a sagebrush trail, a 0.34 acre portion of it, and encompass it into the first lot by a lot line adjustment. It was approved by the planning department at that time. Now that we're trying to vacate the summer subdivision, that lot line adjustment is also being vacated. And then after it's vacated, we hope to, or the planning department has said we could go ahead and do the lot line adjustment and incorporate that small portion back into the first lot. In other words, we're going to revert back to the original 2 lots prior to the subdivision. And that was our intention to do that. As far as the ownership of that property goes, it was given to us by our grandmother years and years ago. We've been paying taxes on it for years and years. The county recognizes it as our property. We're not selling an easement or buying an easement, and we're not changing any easements. That's not our intention. This is actually, I knew that there was a concern, and it was never spoken to us by Mr. Resky about the issue. I have personally spoken to 3 of the other homeowners in the area. They contacted me. We explained to them what we were trying to do, and they had no problem with it at all. The utility companies were contacted. They spoke with the planning department. They were satisfied with what we were trying to do. But the point is, from what I gather now, she has an objection to us trying to do the lot line adjustment and incorporate this 0.34 acres, which is a part of the sagebrush trail. That is what our intention is. We've been approved by the planning department for it. The property's been recognized for years and years as part of our property. We've granted easements. 20 years ago, we granted Mr. Resky an easement on that property for access and utilities. We've never tried to change it. We don't have any intention of trying to change the easements. We don't see where there's any adverse effect on any of the contiguous properties on this. So I guess the point being, we're trying to go ahead with vacating the summary subdivision on this thing. And that is, I think, the main issue of this at this time.
Thank you. Any other members of the, I guess it's proper for you, I mean, we're not going to get into an argument back and forth. This is for testimony.
Ma'am, thank you. I just would like to mention that Mr. Meyer said that he's
Remind you, you're still under oath.
I'm sorry?
You're still under oath?
Yes.
Okay.
Not interested in selling the easement, but I'm not sure why the county, he's positive that the county agrees that this is his property, especially once you look at what was ceded to him in his inheritance. Him and his brother, the easement was not part of that inheritance. I don't see why, well, the county should say, well, it's yours anyway. Mr. Myers has in fact sold a portion of the greater part of the easement to a Mr. John Osgood, I have the deed of purchase. And he also included a 50-foot part of it, 50-foot wide easement in the purchase agreement that went with my mother's property. But he has definitely sold for cash the easement to John Osgood, who lived on Sagebrush Trail. David Gould, who bought property from Mr. Osgood, who presently owns Mr. Osgood's prior property, has a deed also which I'm in possession of, not in this moment, but can produce it within minutes. On his deed, the easement is part of his property. I have the deed from Mr. Myers to Mr. Osgood. The sale of this easement, I question still, just because Mr. Myers says, well, the county says it's mine. I question that it's his land and that it ever was his land. It's an access easement. It's described as such on Marion Myers' plat, and it's described, which is part of the deed I've given you. So, yes, this land has been sold by Mr. Myers, and deeds exist in public record. Mr. John Osgood buying it from him, I believe it was in 2006, 6 or 7, this land was sold to John Osgood by Michael Myers. The easement was sold. So Mr. Myers comes up and said, I'm not interfering with anybody, I'm not playing around with Sagebrush Trail. He has done a tremendous amount of playing around with Sagebrush Trail, for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could you point out where Sagebrush Trail is on the maps?
It says Sagebrush Trail.
On the plat, I gave you.
And what is Sagebrush Trail? It's a road?
It's an easement.
Is there an existing road there now?
There's an existing easement. It was described on the plat that I gave you as at that time, now it's a dirt path, as a bladed, unpaved access route. It doesn't say she cedes this property to the Myers brothers, and it doesn't say she is the owner of this property. The property in question is the subdivision, part of which runs, which abuts Sagebrush Trail. Sagebrush Trail has, since 1981 and before, been at this access route. It also says on this plat, it has been in use regarding Sagebrush Trail. It has been in use in the location shown since 1970 in my personal knowledge. So this has always just been an access path that runs from Myastis Road up toward the Talpa foothills. At one point it veers left facing the foothills. And in fact, originally, you can see it on Marion Myers' plat, travels north and then west back down onto Myastis Road. So this has been an easement, an access route since at least 1971. Marion Myers did not create it. She did not cede it to her grandsons. She did not claim it as her property. On the documents I've given you.
So could I just, to clarify, when it says about joining a parcel of 0.4 acre tract, joining it, are you saying that 0.34 is this trail?
The 0.34 acres that Mr. Myers is talking about is on this trail.
And
his property is this is, it's been re-subdivided, but even on the plat I gave you, his property abuts Myastis Road, and Sagebrush Trail, on the corner of Myastis Road and Sagebrush Trail. His proposal is to cut into Sagebrush Trail because of his claim of this as his property, to extend the land that he has there.
And so you...
I object to this.
What are you objecting to?
I'm objecting to his claim of this as his property, the fact that he has sold it, the fact that even on the purchase agreement for my mother's land, there's wording that says, so in essence, this of course would be a legal decision, in essence, said tract is together with a 50-foot wide, non-exclusive assessment for access and utilities, known as Sagebrush Trail, along the full length of the eastern and southern borders of the land. So I can say he sold it to me too. As I say, it's a legal decision. Wording really would be a semantic decision. But as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Myers claims ownership, has sold it to part of it to me, has sold the greatest part of it to John Osgood. The ownership now is assumed to belong to David Gould, who bought the property, Mr. Osgood's property. My objection is Mr. Myers' constant manipulation of this easement, buying, selling, claiming ownership. I find this is all erroneous. I think his sales are erroneous unless he can prove otherwise. He would, as far as I understand it, have to prove that he gained ownership of this easement somewhere else, certainly not from his inheritance. So where does he make a claim? Oh, I want to pull some of this easement onto my land. I do object. It's an access road that he has no claim on. And the buying and selling that's going on with him is also highly objectionable, a legal matter which will be pursued.
Well, my concern would be if this is a public easement where people can walk, is a trail access, and if this were to revert, and then there would be restrictions. I know we're trying to work on trails, so I think we are going to have to go into executive session.
Okay.
Chairman, Commissioners, yes, we could just go ahead and proceed and have staff address this
And then the staff would address it after we've closed the public session, but this is the time for the public.
And how would I be able to find out what the outcome was? What your decision is? If
Ma'am.
Discuss this at another time.
Chairman, Madam, if I could address you, we'll go ahead and conclude the public hearing, or I'll finish the public hearing process. Then staff will give their presentation and try to address the issues. I, for one, have questions about how this even is impacted by the vacation request. They may be two separate issues. So we'll need to suss all of that out. The board will meet, and then any decision that the board takes will be announced to you. So I would just advise to hold tight for the next 45 minutes or so. Thank you.
This still is the public hearing portion of this, and it's the public's turn.
May I say, just for point of clarity, I never sold an easement to anyone. If I sold property, I would give them an easement. The portion of the property she's talking about in Sagebrush Trail with Mr. Gooding, I guess it's Mr. Gooding, I don't know. I dealt with Mr. Osgood. That has nothing to do with the summary subdivision. The summary subdivision is, this borders, the 0.34 acres of Sagebrush Trail borders on a portion of the summary subdivision. The rest of Sagebrush Trail has nothing to do with the subdivision. And again, as I have stated, as far as ownership goes, we've been paying taxes on it as far as I can remember on it, and it's been recognized by the county. I mean, if we don't own the property, why have we been paying taxes on it for so many years? I guess.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to address the commission now during this public hearing? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Yes.
Commissioners, if I might, ma'am, could we get a statement of your position? Are you opposing this vacation and on what grounds, or is this an issue about the easement? I think that'll help facilitate our conversation.
I am opposing it because this is my access road as well to a 6-acre plot and another 2.6-acre plot of land. And this is how I get to my house. And so I do object to any part of it being altered or subtracted. As far as I know, this was granted to me as a 50-foot wide easement for access to my property. So I do object to having pieces of it pulled off anywhere. Yes.
And then do you have a position as to the actual issue of the subdivision vacation, which is what's before the board today?
This does not address that.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yes.
I didn't get your question.
I'm asking as you have the issue before the board, and Mr. Perea can explain this further, it's an application for the vacation of a summary subdivision. Do you have a position as to the vacation, which is the matter before the board?
Perhaps I don't understand this properly. What I understand is that what Mr. Myers wants to do is extend his property onto a portion of the easement, correct?
No.
No.
That's not the information that I have. So we'll get into the staff portion.
Okay, perhaps I misunderstand what this is then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, is there anyone else? So at this time, we'll close the public hearing and...
One other point, please. I have no intention of obstructing or preventing anybody from using the easements in that area. I never have and never will. I just want that clear. I'm not trying to keep her from getting to her property. That's not my intention. We have made no changes to the easements. And we have no intention of doing that.
Thank you.
I don't know why Mr. Myers assumes that he has the right to meddle with the easement, period. He speaks of it as if it's his property.
The issue in front of us is the summary subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, it does say in this letter...
Commissioner, I'm trying to close the public hearing.
I have a comment to make, that this letter of understanding is to certify that it is understood by the undersigned parties that the increased acreage of revised track 1, which increased acreage .34, is deemed an addition to the Sagebrush subdivision.
Correct.
You know, this is part of the discussion.
And we'll do that at the appropriate time, Commissioner. That's not part of the public. So the public hearing is closed on this matter. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Perea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I would like to hand you a document indicating what this discussion is about regarding easements between Mr. Myers and Mr. Resky. So with your permission, I would like to hand you a survey plat to give you some clarification. Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, as you can see from the date of this recorded survey plat, this was recorded after the lot line adjustment took place in 2006, and this was the document I submitted to Ms. Oreski in my attempt to explain to her that, as referenced on this survey plat, there is an existing 20-foot access easement And as I referenced on page 6 in my staff report that I submitted to you, as one of the conditions of approval, and I'll just go ahead and read that verbatim, all utility and access easements which currently exist within the Sagebrush Summary Subdivision will remain in place without any modifications. So, Mr. Chairman, based on the documentation I gave you and based on the research staff has done on this issue, there will be all existing easements that are indicated on the survey plat that I handed to you and that were, done through the lot line adjustment will remain in place. And as far as staff is concerned, and I would just ask for the legal department's concurrence on this issue, is that this is a private matter between Ms. Zareski and the miners, because as far as the county is concerned, because it's a private access easement, as far as those concerns they discussed with you, the county should stay out of that. All the county is concerned about is that the access easements remain in place. And as I referenced a little bit ago, that's one of the conditions of approval of this plat vacation, that these easements remain in place and nobody will be denied access to their property. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I stand for any questions at this time.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Thank you, Chairman. Rudy, where was the lot line adjustment made? I probably should know this, but where was the lot line adjustment made? I'm looking at the Sagebrush subdivision plat, the actual summary subdivision plat itself.
Okay. It was made, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Blankenhorn, it was made on tract 1, and that's which is immediately adjacent to Sagebrush Trail. And so what you have there is a lot line adjustment incorporated 0.34 acres of Sagebrush Trail into tract 1. And so that made it a little bit bigger back in 2006.
And what was the basis of the planning department's approval of the additional land? How did you determine that that land was properly added to the subdivision?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to my planning director because he was the one who actually approved this lot line adjustment back in 2006. But it was just from my research, it's my understanding that, the lot line adjustment was approved, with the understanding that that 0.34 acres, part of which will remain an access easement for people who own property further down Sagebrush Trail. But I would again defer to my boss if he has any additional input on the basis for that approval.
Mr. Beal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Obviously, quite a bit of time has passed since the approval of this lot line adjustment almost 11 years ago. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Commissioner Blankenhorn, to the best of my recollection, at the time that this lot line adjustment was facilitated by the planning department, it was determined that Mr. Myers demonstrated ownership in that 0.334 acre piece of property, and therefore that's why we facilitated as an approved lot line adjustment.
Well, why wasn't it part of the original acreage? Why was the 0.34 added later?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that's a very good question, one to which I can't address that question at this point. I understand and I respect the fact that you closed the public hearing, but that's probably a question to ask the applicant.
You can ask the applicant.
Okay.
I think I can answer that.
Great.
That portion of the property was in my personal name and my wife's name. The summary subdivision was in my LLC's name, Pot Creek Company LLC. So when we went into, and that 0.34 acres was red flagged for tax reasons because we could never build on it, we could never develop it. But I felt that if it was encompassed in the first lot, at least I would be able to sell it along with the first development of the first lot. Otherwise, I'd be stuck with a piece of property that I couldn't sell and it was worthless, and all it was an easement, and I would be paying taxes on it and not be able to use it.
So you had a separate deed for 0.34?
Yes. And
again, it was taxed separately. It's 0.34 acres, and I've been paying taxes on that portion.
But it wasn't-
separately, under my name, not under the Pot Creek Company name.
Okay, and the 5.261 acres, that was under the LLC's name?
Yes.
But that had originally been deeded from you to the LLC, I assume?
Yes.
And so it was just some kind of a mistake that that when you deeded the 5.261 acres to the LLC, you just neglected
It was an oversight on our part that we tried to reconcile at a later date, realizing it. And we just thought, we just throw it in with the original lot, and that way we can get rid of it instead of keeping it as a liability, because it's worthless to us.
Right, and now the tract 1, is that the 1.217 that was sold? No, none of these lots were
None of the
sold,
lots were
otherwise we
sold.
wouldn't be doing this. Okay. All right, well, it seems like if there's any disputes over the ownership of that .34, it's certainly not anything that we can address here.
Again, if it's a matter of an easement, we have no intention, and we have not changed the easement, and don't intend to. And those easements have been recognized by the utility companies, by other landowners in the area. They contacted me, I've explained what's going on, and they have no problem with it. They personally have contacted me.
And so the new subdivision, the new summary subdivision plat after the lot line adjustment shows that boundary goes out to encompass the .34, but that land that is now part of tract 1 remains an easement for all other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it still remains an easement that can be used. Okay.
No changes at all.
And that could be part of the motion if one is made here in this, correct, Ms. Robinson?
Correct. The commission could choose to adopt the findings of fact of the planning department, one of which I believe was highlighted by Mr. Gray on page 6, number 5. All utility and access easements shall remain in place without any modification.
Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
any other questions?
Well, I guess, is this a public easement then, or is it a private easement? What I'm trying to get at is, can people, if they want to go along this easement to hike, is that permissible?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner O'Donnell, no, it's not stated. It's just strictly for private access and for utilities.
So
Not for public.
We've done a site inspection, because I really would like to see this property. I need to visualize it on the ground. Do people hike on that trail currently? Do you know that? Do people-
It's not a trail.
It's not a trail, it's a road. It's just called that.
It's not a road. It's a trail. It's a dirt trail.
So, is it used by the public? Is anyone familiar with this location?
Mr. Myers created a private road out of it. It was not a private easement. It was originally, as you can see on the plat I gave you from Marion Myers, an access route. I would assume the county owned it. Mr. Myers, I don't know what date, but I am aware of the fact that Mr. Myers turned it into a private road.
Commissioner
Does anyone know if this is part of the Camino Real trail that comes in from Peakwood East Peak and comes into town? Is it distance from here?
As long as I've been here, it's always been a road used as a road, an access road. The term Sagebrush Trail, might imply it's a trail, but it's a road. People drive on it to get to their property. Ms. Zareski uses it to access her property. There's two or three other people that own property up there that use that road and have been used it for years. We grade it
as a road.
Excuse me, I grade it. I
Chairman?
pay for the grading,
Yes.
and I
Ms.
always
Robinson?
have.
Chairman and Commissioners, Mr. Beal, since you did the vacation, could you just let us know if this is a private subdivision, be it a trail or be it a road, that's for the benefit of the property owners and not generally accessed by the public? I think that would help address Commissioner O'Donnell's concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Ms. Robinson. I think that this is a trail. I don't believe that it's an established road, is my personal opinion, but again, that's my personal opinion.
And Mr. Beal, would you consider this to be trail for the use of the private homeowners of this subdivision, or would you consider this to be a public access trail freely available to the residents of Taos County?
Neither. I don't believe that this access trail has any impact on the existing summary subdivision. I don't believe that it's necessary for the existing summary subdivision, and I don't believe that this access trail is a public trail either.
I bring your attention to the exhibit that Ms. Soreski presented to us, and if you go in the agreement shown, I quote, it says, "This is a non-paved access route as shown in the location," and then I can't read the next row. So it's called a non-paved access route.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, with all due respect, this is the first that I've seen of Ms. Soreski's handout.
Oh, I'm sorry, if you go back also, it says it's a bladed, non-paved access route on her exhibit.
Again, and this is my personal right, I'd like to examine the document a little bit more before I give you any type of response.
To the point where you wish to continue this public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it appears that enough questions have been raised at this public hearing. It would be the staff's recommendation to continue this, but I certainly want to make sure that if we do continue this item, that we're specific in what we're asking for clarification and information to be brought back to you to be able to make a decision.
And because of the ambiguity of the questions, I'm guessing that at this time we would continue this hearing to a non-specified date.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, obviously there's two ways to handle this. If by you make it a continuation, you basically are making a continuation to a date specific to come back to bring information, or you could table this, and basically what that would mean is that the applicant would need to start over, send notifications all over again.
I don't think we want to do that. So depending on the number of questions and stuff that the commission would put for you, would you please be able, in your best guesstimate, give us a prospective continuation date and time?
Mr. Chairman, with the understanding of the commission's schedule that we meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month, here we are at the end of September. I would suspect that of what month? Maybe the second meeting in October would be appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Romero.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do a site visit as well. It helps to be able to go to the site and look at what is being questioned today. And if the rest of the commission doesn't want to do that, then I would like for staff to take it myself.
And if there is a site visit, then I would also suggest to the commission that we reopen the public hearing. Well, no, we have the ability to ask anyone in attendance any information that we would need, so we would not have to do that. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would agree to a site visit.
And Commissioner Blankenham.
I'm not clear how the dispute over the .34 acres has any bearing on whether or not, under the law, we can make a decision on the vacation of this 5-lot subdivision. How does that have any bearing on the decision that we've been asked to make today? I mean, if there's a dispute between parties over the ownership of .34, that's obviously not something that we have any jurisdiction over. We can't decide land disputes. That's a matter for the district court. So how does this bear on the decision we've been asked to make?
And Chairman, Commissioners, I'd like to echo that. question. If you're not able to address that today, that would be a question that I would have for the next hearing.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Commissioner Blankenhorn, Ms. Robinson, that is basically the position that staff had taken. Mr. Pereira made that comment to you during his presentation that he believed that this application before you should be for the vacation of a previously approved summary subdivision. The easements would remain in place. The vacation is not basically affecting any of the easements. However, again, we'll yield to you in your discretion as to how you would like to address the design.
So as not to have to go through the publications and everything, I personally would like the site visit on a separate day, not to leave the meeting and come back, because our meetings are long enough as they are. So maybe we can do the site visit on a specific day, so we continue to that, Mr. DeHill, and then the deliberation stage of this public hearing would continue at a next available meeting. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the vacation of the summary, 5-lot summary subdivision.
I second that.
Ms. Robinson, I'd like a recommendation on the motion to approve the summary subdivision vacation in light of all the questions that have been posed.
Chairman, Commissioners, I think you have a few options. You can continue to deliberate in an open session. It is permissible to deliberate in closed session among yourselves and then come back with an answer. Or thirdly, as Mr. Behill suggested, you could continue the hearing to a later date and do a site visit. So any of those three things are available.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
No.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gallegos?
Yeah.
Chairman
Yes.
Fambro?
No. Okay, the motion fails. So the continuance then will be...
Motion to go in executive session, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Is that what we can do?
I believe the vote's already been taken.
The vote's been taken to approve.
No,
It failed, and we could go to executive session.
Motion to go in executive session on this item.
Not hearing a second.
No, I second.
Oh, okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session regarding the vacation of the plat of the Sagebrush subdivision. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gallegos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Okay, so at this time, should we go upstairs and leave everyone here? What's the estimation of time to tell Francis and Tammy?
Let's do it here, Mr. Chair. I think we already have all documents.
Okay. All right.
May I speak? I can supply you with some plaques that might help you in your deliberation on this. I can supply them, I have them with me. It'll show where the subdivision is and the location of the Sagebrush Trail also.
Mr. Chairman, we're in executive session.
Yeah, so everyone needs to exit to the lobby and wait until we come out of executive session. Do you guys wish to have Mr. Pereira and Mr. Hill available for questions? So if you would please remain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We plan on being here and Mr. Pereira will lead on the application, but I'm here in support.
Please, both of you stay in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be happy to answer your questions.
Commissioners, I entertain a motion to come back into open session.
Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gallegos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes, in open session, I would like a report of executive session dealings from our attorney, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. The board met in executive session and closed session pursuant to NMSA 10-15-8-G-3, exception for the Open Meetings Act permitting the board to meet in closed sessions when they're acting as an administrative adjudicatory body. No other issues were discussed.
Motion to accept, Ms. Robinson.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second to accept Ms. Robinson's report. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. We're going to start getting paid by the seconds. Okay.
Anybody else?
Pleasure of the commission.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the applicants of Michael and Patricia Myers, representing Concrete LLC, requesting the vacation 5.261 acres, lot 5, Sagebrush Summary Subdivision. That in my motion that there would be the, I apologize,
The notarized letter of understanding.
yes, sir, the notarized letter of understanding regarding the addition to staff's recommendations, also be in on record. With that, I would set the motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that is to accept the vacation of the subdivision with the notarized letter of understanding entered into the record, and all 6 items of staff recommendation, including number 5, which says all utility access easements which currently exist within the Sagebrush Summary Subdivision shall remain in place without any modifications. We have a motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner
Oh,
O'Donnell?
hold on. Was there a Mr. Vigil?
There was a second, but
There was a second.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I was trying to get your attention and I apologize.
Speak up, next time. I'm trying to read a lot of stuff in this video.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, I know that we could look at just recommending a friendly amendment. The request, unless you were looking at doing 2 separate motions, the request before you today is to request, is a request for the vacation of the summary subdivision and to also do the vacation of the lot line adjustment.
Let's do the lot line adjustment as a second motion.
Thank you.
Continue with roll call.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Now do I hear a motion regarding the second matter before us here today on the vacation of the lot line adjustment?
So moved.
Second.
So the lot line adjustment, the motion is to vacate the lot line adjustment as was previously approved. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, moving on with our agenda.
Motion for a 5-minute break?
7.
7.
Second.
Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. I know. All right, motion to go back into session.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and second, clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Fambro?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is item 11, contracts, agreements, MOUs, and bids. Item A is discussion, consideration, and decision granting the county manager authority to sign 2 separate contracts in excess of $35,000 with Northern Mountain Constructors for Guyana Canyon Road and El Salto Road, pending final review and approval by legal department. Mr. Porter.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, yeah, I'll let Mr. Aramil give any details, but basically, these are 2 smaller projects that we hope will be able to be completed prior to the next commission meeting, and we were able to complete the contracts prior to getting them on the agenda, so we're asking for the authority of the manager to sign these 2 projects.
Commissioners?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the manager to sign 2 separate contracts in excess of $35,000 with Northern Mountain Constructors for Guyana Road, Canyon Road, and El Salto Road. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Farber?
Yes. Okay, next item is item 12, our county manager's report on matters. First being the item A, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
Morning, Commissioners. The first item for discussion on the manager's report is the memorandum of understanding creating the Taos County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. This was provided to us by Judge McElroy. It's basically the organization of this committee, and it's how they gave it to us, how they wanted it worded, and they gave us till September 22nd to voice any concerns or ask for any additional changes. The one thing I do want to ask the board to do is authorize the manager as the signatory and the official representative of the county administration. And I stand for any questions or any recommendations for changes you may have. And I do believe that document was included in your packet, and it's looks like this.
This is what Judge McElroy wants.
Yes, this is what they gave us, this is what they want. They also sent us the draft bylaws. This is the handout that you guys should have. The bylaws basically dictate the membership, the mission, all that stuff. When you go to membership, you'll see that Taos County is represented in many different ways. Our Taos County Sheriff and his office is represented. The county manager is on here, E911 administrator is on here, and the Taos County Jail administrator. So we are represented in multiple actions on this committee. And so this committee has been meeting already. We had our last meeting last week. There was basically the discussion has been all around the changes in the law that took effect July 1 regarding release and bail and no bail. And so that's really where the discussion tends to be. It's really good, in my opinion, to have all these people talking about these issues, because it affects us all in different ways, but yet we all come back around at the end with the same end result. So I am requesting that the board give me the approval to make the change on the signature of the MOU so that it states Taos County Manager and my name on there for the final page of signature.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I so move that we approve the memorandum of understanding creating the Taos County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council with the county manager as signatory.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the MOU with Taos County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the manager as signatory authority. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Farber?
Yes. Item B is a resolution of the Taos County Board of Commissioners regarding the DACA result.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, this is a sample resolution that was provided to us by the group that came before us before, when we passed the resolution supporting sanctuary status. So this is basically something they gave to us, they put before us. I wanted you to have your eyes on it, give us any suggestions or have any concerns you might have. And we will bring it back at a future meeting for actual adoption of it as a resolution, but I wanted you to see what was presented to us. At this time, really, I have not been able to find any reason why we couldn't support this in terms of, in the last case, there was potential threats to our funding. There doesn't seem to be any threats in this kind of support. Ms. Robinson has a lot more information regarding DACA that she's helped educate me on, but at this time I just wanted you guys to see it so you could give me any recommendations or any concerns you might have on the document. If there's none, it'll come back at the next meeting for adoption.
My understanding is Congress is currently working on this. and it may be premature, but it is a good thing that we have this. That's my opinion. Commissioner Romero.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Okoye, do you have any thoughts at this point?
I do believe it's consistent. I've reviewed it, and I believe it's consistent from a policy standpoint with the Sanctuary Cities resolution that we passed. Of course, down the line with this administration, it's impossible to know what you might be targeted for in terms of making a statement for immigrants, but this is consistent with the position of the commission in the last resolution, and I don't have any legal concerns with it.
So is it possible to approve it today, or would you rather wait?
We didn't actually list it as an agenda, as an action item, and we would need a number, and we're happy to bring it back, if that's well the commission, at the next meeting on October 5th.
Okay, it is listed as
Discussion, consideration, decision.
Oh, is it? I
Yes.
didn't know that.
That's how it is today. We have been kind of trying to get these before you guys, before we actually get here on the resolution for adoption. So that was my attempt, is to put in the manager's report for your conceptual approval, and then we'll bring it back for formal approval. But if a motion wants to be made, it does seem like it could be, I guess, adopted. But
We don't have a resolution number, so everything's just a matter of.
So I'm hearing the pleasure of the majority of the commission is for this to come back for formal adoption at the
When will that?
October 5th meeting.
yes, our next meeting will bring it back for formal adoption.
I got a suggestion.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Okay, to make a suggestion now, I mean, for me, I would eliminate number 8 on the whereases, because that's sort of like the horse has already left that barn. You know, there is no continuation of DACA in its current form because of something that was stated earlier, that the legal opposition is based on the fact that the policy was enacted without congressional approval. So, you know, that horse already left the barn. Number 9 is critical. I really want to encourage, as a member of the board, efforts by Congress. You know, it's in their court at this point. But you know, I would still vote for it if 8 remained, but I would suggest that we eliminate it.
Yeah, because that has already happened. That's already been dissolved.
It's just a done deal. It's just another kind of prod in there, sort of. Yeah, you know, it's up to Congress, and Congress has to do something about this. I'm all in favor of us supporting.
8 is kind of a contradiction since that was dissolved by executive order.
So Chairman Commissioner Blankenhorn, you're suggesting the whereas that states the current legal opposition to DACA is based upon the fact that President Obama enacted the policy?
No, that's fine. It's number 8 under the now, therefore.
Oh, now therefore, okay.
Mr. Chair, so for clarification, this is going to come back to us.
Yes, at the next available meeting. Special meeting or regular.
Okay.
I have no first available. Good with that? Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion, any other concerns can be addressed to me, and we'll do our best to incorporate it for when we bring it back on the October 5th. The next item on my list is discussion regarding the process to change the name of the county road. A couple meetings back, Commissioner Romero was inquiring about the idea of maybe changing C-110 to properly reflect what we hope to do with the veteran cemetery. So we did reach out to Mr. Coroner to give us a little bit more direction. And so basically, he gave me a quick couple points. We need to identify all the vested parties, property owners who use the road for their primary access. We'll need to mail them a notice of intent to name the road by certified mail, give them 30 days to comment, make a final decision, and then allow for a 30-day appeal period. So I think the question isn't so much how we, or can we do it? We certainly can do it. There's a process in place. It's up to us what we want to name it. We did ask Mr. Coroner if there are any other veteran names out there, and the road going into Taos Pueblo is Veterans Memorial Highway. So that's the one other veteran named road in our county. Other than that, we're kind of open. So at one time, I think Commissioner Romero suggested a contest, perhaps. I'm not sure how you guys want to go about soliciting ideas, but that might be a good idea, is putting a contest out there or asking the public to submit any ideas or suggestions to us, and then go from there. And Mr. Coroner is here, so I stand for any other questions with his help on the process, if you have any other concerns.
I think we should just begin the process, and Commissioner Romero's recommendation of making it Veterans Road, Veterans Way, I think we should decide that. Because it's our intent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Romero, I'm sorry, the property owners, who has to be notified? Is it the same 1,000 feet on a road, or how?
All affected.
All vested parties, property owners who use the road for primary access, and I would assume anyone along the road or anyone that needs to get down that road to access another arterial road to get to their property, any of them, I believe, would be required to be noticed.
Is that all starting from the highway, or, are we talking the whole length of C-110 then?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the way that I interpret the ordinance is that it is any property that would be addressed off of the highway. So, for example, the Vista Linda subdivision, they have their own road names. They have Vista del Abrazo, Vista Linda Road. They wouldn't be notified as vested parties.
But UNM would be.
But UNM would be.
Or the National Guard.
And any vacant land that would have an easement, unnamed easement onto the old state highway.
Because currently it's just County Road C-110. It doesn't have an actual pretty name to it.
It's, yeah.
Or does it?
There are two names for that road. Which
actually Old State Road 570?
Okay.
Yeah, the official name is Old State Highway 570. The road sign that is up there is County Road 110, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So there's an alias that's in common use, which is County Road 110. So clarifying this matter would actually be a good thing, I think. Something else you need to be aware of is that there is a Veterans Highway from Allsops on the north side to the Pueblo.
Right.
That's in the southern states. So. That's in the same, I think it's in the same emergency service zone, unless the Pueblo has its own emergency service zone. So that could be confusing for emergency response. You might want to consider something like Veterans Memorial Highway, which would differentiate it.
That sounds nice.
Very nice. Do you guys object if they proceed with that? That's exact. One further point. I just checked using our GIS. We have 33 addresses off of the highway.
So they would all have to be served?
They would all have to be served. They would have to change their addresses as a result of this.
Mr. Chairman, what about Veterans Way?
Veterans Way sounds good.
Veterans Way. So would you prefer that we actually solicit a few ideas from the public and then bring that back at a future meeting and see what you guys decide on based on the suggestions that we might get?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a good idea to keep it inclusive of the public, to try to include the public in this.
That's involved.
And then, yeah.
Okay. Good call. There you go.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed that way, and we'll bring this back at a future meeting for more discussion and hopefully a future name change. Now getting into my list of things that aren't necessarily documented. The first thing I want to talk about, since I have Mr. Coronias in the room, is we have been pursuing for many years, Mr. Coronias has been pursuing as part of his Trails Initiative, a trail that would go from the blinking light all the way up to Arroyo Seco. So that currently is a state highway easement that has been granted from the Pueblo to the highway, NMDOT, for that road. What Mr. Coronias would like of the county is to be the applicant as we pursue a Taos Pueblo land application, which I did hand out to all of you, so that we can ask for easement along the existing easement that would be granted to Taos County, specific for a trail. The trail would be, the request is for an easement within the current right-of-way for New Mexico 150 to allow for the development of a recreational trail. The easement would be from Taos Pueblo to Taos County. The location of the land is along the east side of New Mexico 150 between the village of Arroyo Seco and Blinking Light intersection. And I stand for any questions. Mr. Colonias could help me answer them, but I think we brought this before you guys in the past with a presentation. Mr. Colonias also has some of his boards showing you some of the options for the trail. So at this time, I just wanted to alert the commission that I would like to be able to sign the application on behalf of the county, and then if any easement is actually granted, it'll come back to the full board for adoption of easement by resolution. And just a reminder, those are kind of the pictures of how that trail will look. It will be quite likely highly used. It's a very great initiative. I think it's going to benefit everyone within Taos County, including visitors. People will come probably just to appreciate that trail. And it has taken many years of Mr. Colonias' work with the Pueblo to get to where we are right now, and we're very grateful for the Pueblo working with him as well. And timing is of the essence as we get to the end of the year, and we're going to have a change in leadership at the Pueblo. So I think it's important that we go ahead and continue on with the application, and if it's granted, because we'll come back for your full.
And the length of the road, or the length of the trail?
4.5 miles.
And then who does the paving of it?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is really at a negotiation level for permission to actually do the design. We will be looking for the resources to construct the trail. Federal Department of Transportation, State Department of Transportation, private philanthropy, all sorts of different sources will be tapped in order to construct this trail. Cost estimate loosely $2.7 million. It's going to be a nice trail.
Because of the involvement with the Pueblo, it certainly, like I mentioned, took a while to get to this point, and they do feel more comfortable dealing with the county, based on the relationship that we've had. We've been existing for a long time. And so knowing that there's a lot of work to do, that's why the county is requesting the easement. So with the blessing of the board, I will be signing the application and we'll be presenting it to the Pueblo in the next week. So if there's any other questions?
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I think it'll be just direction at this time.
A motion might be nice as moving forward with funding, things like that.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the county manager to sign the supporting documentation for the proposed New Mexico 150 trail. Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Bender?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Colonias, for all his work, and he'll be back. And I hope that we get the approval, and he'll definitely be in front of you a lot more often as we work on trying to find the funding. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about is some good news. I actually, during our break, was able to get a quick call into the Deputy Secretary of UNM-Taos. Our Herder property will be transferred to us officially Friday. He just indicated we will be getting the full packet Friday afternoon. There was one little caveat, because we were only able to prove $25,000 of the $50,000 original asking price. They will be doing a quick claim deed with a reversionary clause. That if we do not use it for public benefit, that it would be reverted back. However, we did talk about the overall goal and that it would eventually be used for public housing, affordable housing. So what they said is as we give it to the town of Taos, if the town is willing to pay, which they have indicated in the past that they would be willing to pay if need be, they could pay it at that time. So we will receive the quick claim deed so that we can have the property, and then as we move forward giving it to the town, we can make sure that the town is aware of the issue, and if they're willing to make the payment at that time, it will remove that reversionary clause for them so that we can continue with it as affordable housing as the ultimate goal. But at this time, based on as long as it took to get to where we are, I did not want to put any more roadblocks in line so that we could get that deed. So we're very excited about that. So there's no questions. I'll move on to a meeting that I had about 2 weeks ago with the town of Taos, the mayor, Mr. Bellis, and the UNM president, Dr. Valdez, and Bill Knief. And this gets back to the question that Commissioner Romero had earlier about the Philip Center. We did send a letter out after a previous meeting at the request of the commission to request the removal of the reversionary clause. So the mayor had received that letter. We had a brief discussion one day about another subject on our TV, and he brought this idea up that UNM had approached the town to potentially open up an early childhood learning center downtown. UNM, I had a meeting yesterday with Mr. Knief, who was able to give me a little bit more information. Basically, UNM has been approached by 4 different private donors who have donated money for the early childhood center that's being proposed. There's already one in place at the South Campus, which, as I understand, is award-winning, top of the line. They want to continue that into our community. So one of the requests of the 4 funders was they absolutely had to be in conjunction with one of the local governments. They wanted the local government to be involved for a couple of reasons, but primarily space. They would like the local government to be able to provide the space at little to no cost, and they would provide the rest of the funding for operations and everything else. Besides just having the space, they wanted some skin in the game and some good collaboration. They approached the town first. The town unfortunately did not have the space long-term to be able to provide them the perfect location. What they can do in the short term is give them the Coronado building near downtown, near the Civic Plaza, but they can't contribute that for more than 2 years. They feel that they're going to need the space in the future. They need to relocate judges, chambers, things like that. So the town then set up this meeting with UNM and myself so that we could talk about potentially the idea of the Philip Center. As you guys know, we did get money for a new senior center. That 1.2 million is readily available to us. We're working, and I'll get to that as I get further down in my report. But we met with facility build, and we're looking at basically completing that building in a 2-year time frame, which we have to do. In other words, we face reverting that money. So in 2 years, Philip Center should be made available. They will remove the reversionary clause, but it's the request to UNM that we consider potentially using that building for an early childhood learning center. I'll tell you, I've had requests from our staff in the past to have a daycare or something readily available to our employees for childcare. And we talk a lot about economic development. The truth of the matter is this is one of the core fundamental infrastructure thing that needs to be available for good economic development into the future. Child care, child development is essential. So I would like to ask the board to consider that. We don't have to make any formal recommendation or approval at this time, but I wanted to let the board know that I like the idea personally, and I would like to have UNM tour the Philip Center, look at it, see if it's truly viable for their plans going forward, and we'll bring this back to you. But I just wanted the board to know why UNM might be sniffing around the senior center, and it's not anything in the short term, but definitely over time. Personally, I think it's an amazing opportunity to cross generations. If we're going to have a brand new senior center, having an early childhood development center, daycare, get them to work together. The high school's right next door. Maybe we could get some of the high school students to also come, and we really can cross generations, and I think that's essential for the future of Taos County, in my opinion. But learning from our past is really the way we get to a better future. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. I was excited about the idea, and I just want you to know I'll be further exploring it. Next, residential treatment center. I did hand out to you guys a letter of intent that was drafted by Lieutenant Montoya, signed by myself, and sent on to Mr. Michael Bronson, CYFD LCA Initial Certification Liaison. Basically, all we're doing at this point is intending to fill out the application. It's a first step. The treatment center is moving along. We do have a planned presentation for the board on October 5th, so we can be brought up to speed in terms of what has been accomplished and where we're at. But CYFD has been very excited about our interest in this project, and they've been fast-tracking things for us. So what we had initially thought might be an 18 to 24-month process looks like it's now being consolidated into maybe a 1-year or 6-month process. So we're moving along quickly. I didn't want to lose our momentum, so I did sign a letter of intent, sent it in, but I wanted the board to be aware that I did that on behalf of the board, and as we go forward, the decisions will be brought to the board for adoption and resolution, so we know how we're moving forward. And I stand for any questions at this time. Like I said, I intend to have a better presentation for you on October 5th. Questions?
Do you have other things you're going to give in your report, or is that concluded?
I have a lot more to go through on my manager's report. That's all I'm going to talk about on RTC then. So, I had a meeting, a pretty productive meeting with Mr. Luis Reyes at Kit Carson. That went well. We did get an update on the bill at the park, so following up on Commissioner O'Donnell's concerns, we did get a credit issued. I handed out the bill. It was basically a $7,000 credit. I want to thank Finance Department and Ms. Pacheco for really the work they did to figure out what was going on. It looks like there was a misreading of the meter, and so we have now replaced that meter. There's a new meter, and they're back to reading things correctly. So thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, for helping bring that to our attention, and we got that straightened out. Another topic of discussion with Mr. Reyes was requesting our collaboration on some more solar arrays. He would like to work, he's talked to the town, I believe he's talking to all the local governments around Taos County, and he came to talk to me about the idea of maybe having 2 or 3 of our properties available for a potential 1 megawatt solar array. It takes about 7 acres per 1 megawatt, and what Kit Carson is doing is basically negotiating on behalf of local governments with the funding provider for a lease. We enter into a long-term land lease, which would pay us up front, so we would get our money up front to be able to allow a third party to go onto our property and set up a 1 megawatt array. So we're going to continue to look at what's available to us and discuss what our options are. But one idea that came right off the top of both of our heads was out near the Veteran Cemetery. We do have an additional 20 acres next to the 20 we've dedicated. That is close to one of their main transmission lines. And so, that is a very attractive piece of property right off the bat for them. We also potentially could look at something in the northern part of our county and then the southern part of our county. And my vision is to see if we could do 3 total, 1 here local and 1 on each other end of the county. So exciting news. We'll continue to pursue that, and there's a chance we'll see that coming up in the future for further decision by the board. We got an invitation earlier last week from New Mexico Association of Counties, Steve Popelman, to see if we would be willing to present to the Legislative Transportation Infrastructure Revenue Subcommittee this Friday, the 22nd in Santa Fe. So we have taken them up on that offer. We will be presenting on transportation challenges facing county governments. So Brent and I have actually set some time aside tomorrow afternoon to prepare the presentation, but ultimately we're going to talk about the number of roads we have, but I think we all know bridges are probably the toughest challenge as of right now, and keeping up with bridges, catching up on bridges. So that will probably be a main component of our discussion, but I'm also open to any other concerns the board may have and that you would like us to address before the full Transportation Committee. Representative Gonzalez is the chair, so we certainly want to have a good showing on behalf of Taos County and see what we can do to maybe improve some of those challenges.
Is this remote for people?
Yes, we've also been having the superintendent go with us as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'd sure like for you to alert them to the issues we've been having with the bridge.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner O'Donnell, we will, and I have actually been forwarding emails and stuff. When the barriers were moved, I sent that to the Deputy Secretary immediately as well, so they are aware of the issues that are happening up here. And I'm very grateful for the relationship we've been building with the Secretary and Deputy Secretary. I think it's been beneficial to us all.
As part of it, just that line of communication, which I think you guys are really doing a good job of building. Just so they know that, there has to be some route for us to take when we have issues like
a warning light here or something else there, that, that the process has never seemed to me to be all that clear. I think you guys are making it more clear by establishing the communications with DOT, but I don't know. Something along those lines, if you can fit that in, if it seems appropriate.
One of the things that, Mr. Chairman, that seems to me like is quite apparent is that sometimes officials from the highway department will do a presentation and they're asked, say for example, about the intersection light here, and they won't know anything about it. But then you'll talk to other officials from the same administration and they'll say, oh yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen in a couple of years. I've encountered that in the last couple of weeks in the meetings that I've attended. And so, the signal light in front of us remains a big concern for all of us. And so, if you can touch on that as well, that would be really good.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we were told they aren't going to put a traffic signal there.
But in talking to someone else recently, myself, they in fact said that it's in the plans already.
Chairman, Commissioner Rivera, what me and Mr. Pacheco were told is don't try to be politically correct here. Do not listen to District 5 when it comes to New Mexico 68, that the general office is the lead on it. So if there's any questions, that we should go to the general office, and Mr. Jaramillo is the liaison that we should be communicating with.
Also, just in relation to the Gorge Bridge visitors area, if you've seen their signs, I think the highway department is responsible for signage. Like they need to replace that historic sign relating to historic signage in the visitors area.
Okay. Going back to the light, Commissioner Romero, I agree. I've heard, I'm trying to do a little history and go back in time. I've heard we've actually paid for that light at the time of the initial construction, so we're trying to track down those documents to prove that so that we can make sure that that project does get completed. Because as I understand, we've made sure we paid for that into the future. And so if they're not going to do it, then maybe we need to shake the cages and find out about where that money went and why isn't it being utilized at this time. So.
And the temporary light that's been there for 13 years down in Rogers.
We did have
an Opticon which violates their own ordinance.
We did have a discussion on that light, Chairman Fambro. They indicated, the Deputy Secretary indicated he'd get back moving forward on that to get it to us in terms of the agreement. They want the county to assume the agreement of maintenance, which we've kind of done in the past on certain lights. But they said that the county's willing to accept that agreement, they would get the permanent lights up sooner than later. So I'll continue to push that as well.
The one individual, Mr. Chairman, that I did talk to about that as well recently was that they were having issues with drainage and the fact that they didn't have any additional properties next to the highway to be able to drain off all of that moisture water that accumulates there in front of the Presbyterian Church and the Vermonter's Post Office. And so they're hoping to acquire land along State Road 240 that they would be able to drain to eventually.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
And in addition, going back to the visitor center, thank them that they put the barriers up, but it doesn't solve the parking issue. And we really would like to see DOT put additional parking in the rest area, because they've, maybe eliminated one potential problem, but really have created another. So, we keep hearing from someone now I hear, don't listen to, that there's no money. But it's a safety issue out there.
Okay. We will continue to bring that up, and if any other things do arise, by all means send it to me and I will do my best to forward it on to the Deputy Secretary.
And one more point on the Mexico 68, the town of Taos is taking the lead during a meeting regarding Mexico 68. It'll be for the commission and the town of Taos governing body, so it'll be an informal session that you'll be allowed to ask DOT any questions regarding Mexico 68.
When?
Mr. Espinosa doesn't have a timetable, but he's been in communication with Santa Fe on it.
Can you let us know?
Yes, we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Okay, so moving on, I had mentioned a little earlier about the senior center. Brampton and I had a meeting last week with a company called Facility Build. Facility Build is a contractor out of Albuquerque. They are what they call a design build firm. They have their own architects, engineers on staff. I left you some of their handout for each of you that they gave us. But basically what makes them attractive to us, especially in regards to the senior building when we have a very tight time frame of 24 months, because everything's in-house, they are able to go from design to completion in a much faster time. They said that they have a statistic that they're typically 33% quicker than your typical process where you do an architect, you go out to bid for the architect, you get that work done, you bring it back, you find out what you need to go out to bid for the construction, and you go through all that. They're also, because it's all under one roof, you have a project manager that's taking it from concept to design to completion through the construction phase. So they are a CES vendor, which means we do not need to bid them out as well. They tend to also be about 10% cheaper when you finalize a project. What they don't do are change orders. What they will do for us is give us a cost after the estimate of what it takes all out. And anything they can't obtain, they eat. So it tends to be a little higher visually when you first look at the bid because there's nothing beyond that. That is what it's going to cost us to get out, all the way out of construction and a certificate of occupancy. So they also require a letter of intent, not so much for intent that we will definitely work with them, but they do a lot of design work up front. And as you'll see on that, there's a flow chart kind of the work, and this is the one I'm talking about. You see project development, scope of work, plans, budgets. They do all of that without any cost. Basically, there's no charge for that first column. When they move into the pre-construction is where they would require that letter of intent. And then they would continue going forward. The letter of intent basically only commits us to architectural costs. Their architectural costs are about 2 to 4% of the total project, as opposed to what you're used to seeing as 10% of the total project. So if we're on the hook for anything after we get out of that pre-construction column, it'll be just the architectural design at a 2 to 4% cost of total project, and we will own those designs, and we could go forward still in terms of how we want to take the construction phase on. So I just wanted to bring to your attention that we have met with them. We did like the proposal, especially in regards to the senior building because of the tight time frame, but they may also be able to help us on other projects like some of our fire districts. We have a couple buildings that we want to get up faster than, as fast as we can. The money's available, and this may be a good idea to use Facility Build and help us come up with a couple designs that we would just roll out accordingly. And our operations building that we've had in discussions for a few years out at Landfill Road may be an opportunity for Facility Build as well as we get a little closer into that. So.
Mr. Chairman, I would really like to see us take a lead building green energy, and it would even at some point revisit the land use regs where we give people some kind of credit, we waive a permit or something if it's demonstrated it's a lead building, energy efficient, using natural light, solar. I don't know if you have the opportunity to go see Taos Soil and Water Conservation's new building.
Not yet.
That was done by Mr. Woods. It's LEED certified. It takes into account, energy efficiency. And I just think we need to set an example. And also with the fire department buildings, if it may add a little cost on the front end, but on the back side, we're going to save money on electricity and different things. So you could talk to them to see if they can build LEED. We have, no flush toilets, energy efficiency and lighting, whatever it is that gets us to a LEED certification. I think we really need to set an example for the rest of New Mexico that we care. We don't want to squander our resources that for, our grandchildren will benefit if we do this. So if you could take a look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. We always strive for the efficiencies, especially the fire departments. We realize we lose a lot of money in heating and cooling every year, and so certainly was for us a must-have that we have that efficiency anyway. So we'll take it a step further and look at the lead. Okay, moving on to my next subject. Community custody and ankle monitoring. A couple months back, is kind of in anticipation for the law that changed July 1 on no hold bonds and stuff like that. We did start looking at what our options were in terms of being able to potentially run our own community custody monitoring program. It's about $100,000 a year that we spend on our contract to do that, to provide that service with a third party. So $100,000 on the table is something we had to look at. We certainly felt it was in our best interest to go down that road. I want to thank Lieutenant Montoya and Tanya Jaramillo, who really kind of took the lead to start doing the research on this. But I've included a little bit of a handout on some of the information they've come up with, and you'll see the company is called Satellite Tracking of People LLC. They're based out of Houston, Texas. They provide us all of the actual hardware, the monitors themselves, the sober link, all the things that we would be putting on. They also are able to provide to us the services, and this is what I'm talking about. They can actually provide the tracking services. So in lieu of having a full-time staff person sitting there monitoring each of these things 24/7, we could pay $1.50 a day to have them do the monitoring. The issue that's come up in the past and the biggest concern when we were issuing our contract was 24-hour monitoring. What happens when, more specifically, there's a judgment against someone on a maybe domestic violence case and you have a victim that needs to be protected through these monitors? What then? That was a concern about both vendors. How does that really get done? We've had some preliminary talks. We do have dispatch under our roof. We have a 24/7 hour detention facility. We have a lot of the resources available to us to be able to provide this service probably quicker and even more efficiently, especially on the 24-hour. So we're going to continue to pursue this. I just wanted the board to be aware that we have gone down this road. We're kind of at a place now where if you didn't know about it, I didn't want to take it any further. Because, there potentially could be some other issues, maybe some politics. Our goal is not to put anyone out of business. Our goal is not to compete with the third parties that are out there. But as I mentioned, $100,000 that is going out of our coffers for this service allows us either more people. There's lots of options for us, so we are going to take it to the next step, really pursue it at this point, and eventually the board will probably see a contract or an agreement for us as we move forward. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention and let you know it's something that we've been pursuing.
And that's, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really exciting because, as you recall, Judge McElroy referenced that maybe we needed to put some more money into our ankle bracelet program, and this is just the perfect way to segue into that. So thank you.
Many other counties do it, so we're not the first county to do it, which is great. We can also look at the benefits that other counties have experienced doing this program. And, there's still some logistics to work out, but we will get there and we'll come back with a full proposal at a future meeting for the board. Next subject I want to thank Tanya Jaramillo again for preparing a letter of support for an HIV grant that Commissioner O'Donnell brought to our attention. So that's in your packet as well. And I'll be signing that and submitting that on behalf of that grant.
I didn't see it.
I hope I handed it out. If I didn't, I will get it to you before the end of the meeting. And maybe in my paperwork.
My thought there, is it possible that Chairman and you could sign so they see that there's a elected official, because this does have to do with policy. And so,
I'm happy with that. If we can definitely make that change and make it come strictly from the chairman, if that's the will of the board, I think that is more powerful, definitely. So if that's the recommendation, we'll change. This is the letter I'm referencing.
Okay.
We'll make it to from the chairman on behalf of the full board of the county commissioners.
I think that politically looks good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And an update on our screen plant. I know Commissioner O'Donnell has brought this up. We do have a screen plant that has been sitting in our fleet yard for many months now. We took a little walk out there last week ourselves, Brent and myself, when we walked around with Brian Otagon, the fleet director. It's a little worse than we thought. It's going to be a lot more than just a belt replacement. He has a lot of concerns about the hydraulic hoses, the hydraulic fittings, and just overall safety of the unit. It hasn't worked in quite a while, completely worked. And so it may cost a lot to repair this equipment. So we are exploring all our options at this point. We are looking at seeing what a brand new one costs. We're looking to see if there's any used ones out there that are in good shape that we can put into use. We're also looking at scaling back instead of having a full belt plant, maybe fabricating or purchasing a small stationary screen so that we can get to work sooner than later and at least start screening material without a full plant. But it doesn't look like we're going to get that screen plant back online anytime quickly. And so we are looking at alternatives and options for the county so that we can start utilizing the pit out in Penasco and continue to pursue other ideas for the county.
Is it of your opinion a crusher would be better than a screening plant? And then my thought was, did you find out how long it would take to pull the 3,300 tons out? Because if we rented one and we could pull the material out in 2 weeks, yeah, you know, if you could get an estimate. I think when I talked to someone, that represents about 20 dump truck loads, 3,300 tons. I don't know. What do you know about that?
3,300 tons, you're looking at a few weeks of just straight production.
But I just wondered if that might be the best way now is to rent something.
Well, if we rent a crusher, then we're looking at permitting and certifying. If we start now, we might be able to get something going by the summer.
Oh, you have to do a permit process if you're renting something?
To run a crusher, yes.
Oh.
Because of the noise?
The noise, the dust, would the BLM allow it on the property?
Oh, you say they would allow a screening plant more readily?
According to Mr. Chavez, when we did speak last, yes, he was going to allow it, but that was...
The screening plant, but the crusher is a...
The crusher is a whole different animal.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see.
Whole different set of rules for that.
Huh, okay. But even if you rented a screening plant for a couple weeks and could pull...
We could pull, I could pull all the drivers, all the trucks, anything that's running, we can pull anything that's screened out of that place.
And then there's a bunch of the rock. Did we get that on board that we can take the rock for the whole district, for Gabions and just that?
From what I understood, the rock that's in place right now, we're not allowed to, we shouldn't use, excuse me, but anything that we cut that comes out of production, we can use. Now comes the problem with stockpiling. So we pull it out of there, we have to place it somewhere.
Okay, could you follow up on the rock? Because I was told we could take that rock.
That's part of the, as you recall, Commissioner, it was in the letter that we're not to touch that rock.
Oh, I guess
It's on the site, it's already piled there. We're not to touch that.
Okay, I'd still like to follow up because I was told by someone in Farmington that we could take that rock. We just had to record the amount we took.
That's the amount, that's what they're gonna use for their own roads and for their own Gabion baskets or for whatever they need it for. So Mr. Chavez was always clear that that's theirs, and anything else, like Mr. Pacheco said, if we pull and dig, that's ours, but anything that's already on site is theirs.
Okay, that's all I was told.
So rent is an option, definitely we'll look at, but it's probably, renting probably wouldn't happen until the spring, so that we could really plan for it, and Mr. Pacheco can, mobilize crews accordingly. As Commissioner Romero mentioned, we're all preparing for what potentially will be an early winter and a long, hard winter, so I know that they're already getting ready. The fleet department's trying to get everything ready so that we can be prepared for the winter, so if we rented one, we would probably do it in the springtime. And as you guys approved earlier, to move some money over for a transport vehicle, you'll be seeing in a future meeting a request for another transport vehicle as one of the original requests that brought to you guys last year. We have the means, there's a great vehicle available, and so we're going to take the opportunity to get that and move forward with that, so you'll see that purchase at the next meeting. And I have one more topic to just discuss. Witt Road, speed humps. We did do the overlay, and we have gotten a lot of feedback both ways as to great, thank you for removing the speed bumps, and also please immediately return the speed bumps. So we've done a little history, we've looked back. It looks like there was a traffic study that was performed in 2009 by Mr. Lawrence Ortega prior to the installation of the last 3 speed bumps. The traffic study at that time suggested not doing any speed bumps on Witt Road. What it suggested instead was a 3-way stop at the intersection of Octaviano and Witt Road. So the 3 speed bumps that were installed after that fact were not done by the process. We did not follow our own process to install those last 3 speed bumps. So I know that there's a lot of pressure both ways to leave it as is, to put them immediately back, and I would like the board to consider going through a public process and really allowing the residents of Witt Road to be heard and to do the process that we missed back in 2009. And I think that that's the fairest way to move forward and really get the true opinion of the community. So I'd like to hear your input on that and your thoughts. It just doesn't seem like we would be doing the right thing by the residents if we replace 3 speed bumps and never follow the process in the first place. So those are my thoughts on Witt Road. It's a bit of a can of worms, I understand that, but it is also something that didn't seem to be done exactly right the first time, and we should probably look at it and see if we can take a step back and do it right now. So those are just my thoughts on Witt Road. And
I guess the question is, will we get everybody that's representative along the road? It almost might be better to go and poll all the people on the road and get their opinion. I've had a lot of people, they're speeding, and I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt. So it is a safety issue. So I'm not opposed to a public process, but sometimes you don't get a real scientific measure of it.
Well, if you're open to that, I would like to pursue that. Based on the study in 2009, it looked like there was a lot of opposition from the schools, public safety in general. Taos Fire they did not support him. Our ambulance, EMS did not support him at that time. So there's still a lot of back and forth. I think a discussion should be had in the public forum, and I would like to pursue that. So.
Commissioner Blankenhorn.
Yeah, whenever you pave a road, everybody who lives on that road, almost everybody who lives on that road is going to run speed humps. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the best decision.
Understood, and I think that's what I would like to really pursue. I would really like to follow our own process, first of all, and let the residents have their input to make sure they're heard, but also make sure we do get the input of the schools and our public safety officials that need to access that road to serve the people that live along it. So I do agree. I think it may mean at the end of it, we don't put as many, or we don't have the whole amount that was there before we did the road, but we may still have 1 or 2. I don't know, but I would like the process to be followed. I think that's the fair thing for the residents.
How many were there originally?
About 8.
No, not 8.
Between 6 and 8?
Yeah, between 6 and 8, like that.
And there was actually a few in there that were kind of speed bumps. We just solely wrote it
I just
already.
recall 4, but I'd have to go drive the road and see where the signs are.
Not correct.
Mr. Chairman, what I've discovered based on the speed humps that are on West Romero Road is people will just speed through them, and it increases the speed.
Yeah, there are statistics that show speed bumps don't really deter speed, and that I think is probably one of the issues.
Law enforcement issue. Anything else?
That is all I have today. I didn't put everything on there. We've been very busy the last few weeks, but I definitely wanted you guys to be aware of a lot of the things that are important to the county. So as we go forward and we get our new software, I will continue to revamp my manager's report, get it into a format that hopefully won't have to listen to me as much, but it will have all this information handed out every time we have a meeting.
Mr. Chairman. Some more thoughts. I'm sure you've all experienced the wait on the Elad Hill with the pipeline construction going on. When it first started, the state police was providing a little bit of guidance, protection. They were at least parked on the side of the road for a couple of days, and I think that helped deter the traffic from speeding up the hill like bats out of hell. I'm on that road constantly on a daily basis, and just the amount of the traffic that's going up the hill and the speed that it's coming up the hill is really dangerous. At that point, drivers are really agitated. They're in a hurry to get to Taos, and then of course there's people leaving Taos and in a hurry to get into Espanola or Santa Fe. So I know that we don't have jurisdiction there, but if we could at least contact the state police office.
I saw them yesterday.
Were they there? Yeah, there's.
And Friday.
If they were there on a more permanent basis, I know there's probably budget issues, but it would be would definitely deter the speed of traffic going up the hill, especially. Also, the highway department, I forgot to mention earlier, the intersection of C110 and 68, the signs that are in that center island there, that concrete island, they get taken out probably as soon as they get put up. And it happened again this weekend. I had to remove the sign that was destroyed to pieces off the highway before somebody else hit it and wrecked with it. But I don't know what the solution is. It's something that gets hit quite often. All of those signs that are in that area. I don't know if it's somebody that's doing it on purpose, that didn't want them there in the first place. Who knows? But if you could mention that to the highway department. Also, I do believe we have a lighting agreement with the state highway on that intersection. Some of those lights are off almost 90% of the time. They go off and on, but it creates a really dark intersection, especially now as we go into winter. And UNM, mostly UNM, leaving school late at night. So if you could communicate that to the highway department, I would really appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I do know also our sheriff's office has been asked to do additional patrols. So I know the sheriff had mentioned that he's had officers down there as well to try and patrol and just be present so that people are deterred if nothing else by their presence. So I will mention that as well to state police.
Thank you.
Any questions for the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, see if the sheriff will patrol Whit Road to stop the speeders.
We did ask that of him, and he indicated he would do his best to try and get his officers to pass through there and escort of us accordingly as they can.
So I have just a couple of things. I'm concerned about the signage for the seniors there. I'd like to see more signs in that parking lot.
We're going to actually add more senior parking to the back, which is even closer and more convenient to them. So I believe the facility started working on that this week.
And then this ADA switch for handicapped people is still broken, and I'm wondering if we're violating ADA because we now close the two east and west entrances to the public. So I would really like to see that fixed.
I thought it had been, so I'll follow up. It was working, it worked once last week because I saw somebody use it and it worked. So I'll follow up and see what's going on.
It's working. Okay, and then I guess we did not get that AG Tech grant, correct? No.
No, we did not. Unfortunately, we did not get into this. in time. I did find out though that there was so many requests that the total amount was not going to be more than $8,000 that they were going to actually be able to get off per application. So yes, we did miss out.
All right, and then if you could decide which would be the best way to proceed, I made a request earlier. I still would like to see the NMAC conference accounting and the letters of thank you. I just want to know, you know, I brought some money in. I just want to make sure those people are thanked. I don't know if the letter of thank you went out, but I could maybe sit down with you for an accounting, or if you want to bring it to the full board. I just want to know what we all raised and who came through, because there was questions whether some of the people I contacted, whether they came through. I just would like to see that accounting. So whenever you could do that, I would really appreciate it.
We'll work on preparing a report for the full board.
Okay, excellent. And then any idea when you'll put a bin for cardboard recycling in Chamisaw solid waste transfer station? When I was up there volunteering for the reuse center, I could not believe the amount of cardboard going into the landfill. So I don't, you know, now we know glass isn't an issue. I don't care too much about glass or aluminum, but I think if there's a market for cardboard, I just would really like to see a recycling bin for cardboard up there.
I don't have an answer right now. We're coming actually.
Okay, thank you.
You did remind me of something on the Village of Cuesta. We'll be having a cleanup this weekend, and we'll be assisting, our solid waste will be assisting them, so just wanted to, I forgot to mention that, sorry.
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Manager. This is all excellent. I appreciate your report and how you're moving certain initiatives that I support. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does that conclude the manager and Commissioner O'Donnell's report?
I'm done. Thank you.
That was a joke, Commissioner. Next item on the agenda is Commissioner's Report Matters. IA is a multi-agency partnership for gasoline services. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to postpone this agenda item to the next meeting, given the hours late, and looks like we have a long executive session.
Thank you. Item B is new business to be considered at future commission meetings. Commissioners, any announcements that we haven't already made?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to pass out the High Road brochures. This is the final weekend of the tour. We have nothing to do on the weekend. Would like to go drive up to Penasco. This is what, I guess, Lodger's Tax helped to pay for. It's a really nice map. As you see, half are in Taos County and half are in Rio Arriba. And it's a great way to get out, and the aspens should be changing hopefully by Saturday. So if you get a chance, please take the tour.
Anything else, Commissioners? Next item on the agenda is item 14, executive session. Taos County Board of Commissioners may convene in closed session for the following items. Item A, discussion, consideration, and possible litigation regarding Mr. Jeffrey Jackson and alleged violations of the New Mexico Subdivision Act and Taos County Subdivision Ordinance 2005-8. These matters may be discussed in executive session under the exemption 1015-1H7, which allows for discussion of pending or threatening litigation. Item B would be an update regarding litigation between Parker Excavation and Taos Regional Landfill Board. These are also under the exemption of 10-15-1H7. And item C finally would be the discussion and consideration regarding status of RFP for legal representation in the appeal of the decision of the state engineer in the Top of the World Water Rights protest. These also are under the exact same exemption, 1015H7. Is it the pleasure of the commission to go into executive session at this time?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenham?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Pepper?
Yes.
Do we have a guesstimate as to how long?
And then Mr. DeHill will be part of the first part.
How long do you think it might take?
Mr. Audio will be leading this executive session, so we'll need to go upstairs and call on speakerphone. So I don't know, defer to Mr. Vihel, I'm not familiar with this issue. The other two should be relatively quick. Hey, Ed, do you know about how long this one will take?
I would dare say maybe half hour.
Can we cut it to 20?
Another?
Good, Mexico.
Good? Yeah. Ready, Francis? Okay, Tammy?
Almost.
Motion to reconvene.
So moved.
Second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Farber?
Yes. Ms. Robinson, we have 3 items in our closed session. Would you give a report on how those matters were handled?
Thank you, Chairman. First, the board met in executive session pursuant to Open Meetings Act Exemption 10-15-1H7, allowing for discussion of pending threat and litigation in regard to possible litigation regarding Mr. Jeffrey Jackson and alleged violations of the New Mexico Subdivision Act and Taos County Subdivision Ordinance 2005-8. No action was taken and no other matters were discussed. Secondarily, the board met pursuant to an executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act Exemption 10-15-1H7, allowing for discussion of pending or threatened litigation regarding the matter of Parker Excavation and Taos Regional Landfill Board. No other matters were discussed and no action was taken. Lastly, the board also met pursuant to Open Meetings Act Exemption 10-15-1H7, allowing for discussion of pending or threatened litigation in the matter of the appeal of the decision of the state engineer in the Top of the World Water Rights protest. No other matters were discussed and no action was taken.
Motion to accept Ms. Robinson's report.
So moved.
I'll take that as a motion in a second. Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Farber?
Yes, moving on to item 15, Taos County Board of Commissioners may convene an open session regarding the next 2 possible items. Item A is possible decision on litigation regarding Mr. Jeffrey Jackson and alleged violations of the New Mexico Subdivisions Act and Taos County Subdivision Ordinance 2005-8. Ms. Robinson, do you have a recommended course of action for the commission to take today?
I do not.
Okay. Pleasure of the commission.
I'm sorry, Chair, point of clarification. You're asking us a recommendation of,
On item A.
on item A in terms of, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit low calorie. I'm not sure if you're asking a substantive question as to a recommended course of action or as to the
Do you
motion.
recommend a motion to be made by this commission at this time regarding?
I do not have a recommendation that a motion be made at this time.
Pleasure of the commission. Okay. Item B, decision regarding reassurance of RFP for legal representation. The appeal of the decision of the state engineer, Top of the World Water Rights Purpose, Vice Chair Gallegos.
Make a motion to reissue an RFP for the approval.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Blankenhorn?
No.
Vice Chair Gagos?
Yes.
Chairman Farber?
Yes. Final item on the agenda today is item 16, adjournment.
Move to approve. Move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners, for a very long day today, and thank the public. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you all. I know.